And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Deeper Dive. It is Wednesday, July 19th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by Boom Fantasy. We have an 8-game slate going on, and luckily for me, it can only go better than the early slate. No other real direction for me to go at this point. Hit the like button if you haven't done it already. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter. Adam, what's up? How's your early?
Not great, because once again, the Astros can't hit in Coors Field. No pitching did anything, or at least no pitching outside of Coors Field did anything. But the Orioles won, so that's nice. They're tied for first place now with the Rays.
Is it nice?
I mean, I have some money on it now.
It was a lot nicer when the Dodgers scored 2 runs in the first inning. And I thought everything was going to be amazing.
I mainly just can take a deep breath, because I fully expected that Sunday I bet the Orioles to win the division. Finally made the bet, and I just fully expected an 0-10 run immediately after that. So
I didn't have the Orioles today, so I should have known that they were going to be exceptional.
Yeah, I mean, I never have the Orioles somehow.
I can't get those guys right to save my life, so that's always fun. But
the Orioles and the Braves are the ones I never get to and would love to every slate, and then Kansas City just shows up every time.
Yeah, nothing good is happening for me right now. The Dodgers game is over, and I don't know, is it still 1-0 in the? What's the? Oh, it's 4-0 Houston now. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, McCormick
still losing 80%.
Yeah, that sounds about right for me. Winnings $500.
Yeah, Waldichuk's done with 7 points. Bayo, I assume, is Bayo's negative.
Yeah, 65% Bayo, or however much Bayo I had, something in that neighborhood, negative. Urias negative. Woof. Well, you want to talk about this slate?
Sure. Let's see what pitching we can get wrong today.
Can't go much worse. All righty, guys. We're going to start it off. Toronto Blue Jays 4.5 run implied total taking on the Padres 4.4 run implied total. Jose Barrios going for Toronto. Yu Darvish going for San Diego. 7% ownership to Barrios and 13% ownership coming into Darvish. They're basically the same price. Which side of this one do you prefer?
Slightly the Darvish side, I think, but they're pretty comparable. Barrios is just a little bit more expensive on DraftKings. Neither pitcher has a very good matchup, but they're both good enough pitchers. And this is another slate where you have good pitching, but a lot of them are in tough matchups, and none of them are, true top tier aces. Castillo is the closest thing that you have, but it's just one of those slates where you're still going to get a bunch of ownership going to the best options, but the best options just aren't that good. And so I think that Darvish and Barrios both end up being those guys that, I don't like taking pitchers against Toronto. I don't like taking pitchers against the Padres, but 7% ownership to Barrios, 13 to Darvish. You compare that to Justin Verlander getting 3 times the ownership of Darvish for $800 more. Charlie Morton getting more than double the ownership in a tough matchup himself. It's just 2 guys that, from a talent standpoint, they're not that far off from the pitchers that are going to get the most ownership. And there's a lot of volatility in baseball, and that's something you kind of just have to accept. When I did my Sims video earlier, I was getting a lot of Darvish. I was getting over the field on Barrios. And that was kind of my big takeaway from that video, is that I was getting to a lot of the not low owned, but lower owned mid-range pitching, sacrificing some of that Verlander. They're still getting the plenty, but just sort of moving some of that Verlander ownership to these other guys like Darvish, like Barrios. It's a tough matchup for both. I'm not confident in either one, but I'm not confident in most of the pitching today.
Neither am I. Not fun. I have very little of both of these guys. Don't expect to get too much, although I wouldn't mind it. I'm getting to too much of a bunch of people that I don't want, and we'll get to that in a bit. Do you want to get to the offenses here? Blue Jays are 10th in ownership. Padres are 7th. They're right next to each other in top stack, 8th and 9th. Not a ton of value in this one, but obviously a lot of talent.
Yeah, I kind of think the offenses are similar to the pitching, where you're not going out of your way typically, especially at these prices, to roster guys against Darvish, and same goes for Barrios, but they are 2 really talented offenses. It is worth noting, and I don't know if this will change as the sample size gets larger or not, but the Rogers Center over the last 3 years has been, I think, the third best home run park for right-handed power. This year, it has a 97 park factor. They did change the entire outfield dimensions in the offseason. Most of the walls, though, were moved in and then just made taller. So, again, I don't know, we're, 3 months into the season. I don't know if this ends up correcting and it remains a really good home run park or not, but it is a potentially, worse spot than it used to be. But Darvish has only struck out 21% of righties this year, which is interesting to me. He has also allowed a higher expected ISO to righties than to lefties. 174 expected ISO to righties, 106 to lefties. That strikeout percentage is like 8 points lower against righties than against lefties. Springer, Bichette, Guerrero, Chapman, Merrifield, Jansen. I mean, there's a lot of right-handed power in this lineup. At those prices, though, I think it's tough to get to them too frequently. And then the same goes for the Padres. Barrios was getting lit up by lefties over the last couple of seasons. This year, he's corrected it at least to some extent. Still a 189 expected ISO to lefties, 176 to righties. So he does give up some power. And you have plenty of it, in this Padres lineup, but they still just both grade out as middle of the pack stacks, especially when you consider, how expensive they are. Toronto coming in third from the bottom in stack score. The Padres are seventh from the bottom, so closer to the middle of the pack. In terms of top stack percentage, they're both like right in the middle, but they're just both pretty expensive.
I'm trying to look up some of the park factor stuff, but it was a little wonky on StatCast, so didn't get to what I wanted to get to. I don't have much of either side of this one. I have a couple scattered Toronto stacks, a couple scattered San Diego stacks. I like the Toronto side a little bit more than I like the San Diego side, but not by anything too crazy. I don't know what to do with this game. I kind of like all of it and none of it at the same time.
It's just one of those games where from a median projection standpoint, especially when you factor in the salaries, none of it looks that good, but there's a lot of talent in this game. So like I said, when I ran the Sims video earlier, I was getting above the field on the pitching. I wasn't getting to a lot of the bats. And if that happens here, fine. If as we go into lock, I end up not getting much Darvish Barrios, but I'm, let's say 2 to 3x the field on the Blue Jays and the Padres hitters, I wouldn't care about that either. And that's not even to say you have to have any in this game. They're expensive enough that there is a middle ground. I do think I misspoke a minute ago. I had a FanDuel pitching pricing pulled up, not DraftKings. So Darvish 8K, Barrios 8,200. I think I said like 9,800 for Barrios. But there's a lot of talent here. And from a median standpoint, none of it looks great. But from a range of outcome standpoint, I think there is tournament appeal pretty much across the board.
Yeah, at least for the Blue Jays and Padres, I mean, maybe I should want the full 5-man, and I don't mind having a bit of it, but I like any sort of 3-man stack you put together for the Blue Jays or Padres to fill out your lineup should look pretty good, especially if it's, you're with the Giants who are already ridiculously cheap.
Right. I think that's a good way to approach it as well. You have a lot of cheap offenses today that look pretty good. The Yankees are cheap. The Giants are cheap. The Mets are cheap. So I think that's a pretty good way to approach it, and I know that was showing up a little bit in my Sims video. I think one of the top lineups I had, it was like maybe a 5-man Yankee stack or 5-man Giants, whatever it may have been. And then it was just like George Springer or Vlad Guerrero 2-man. Great. Get a couple home runs off Darvish and move on.
Yep. Rank this game.
I'm going to just go by what I'm pretty sure I had in the Sims video earlier, which would have been Darvish, Barrios, Blue Jays, Padres, I think.
Based on what I have right now, I think my answer is Padres, Blue Jays, Darvish, Barrios. And
I think you could put this in any order and it'd be fine.
I legitimately don't think, any order. If you want to tell me it's Barrios, I don't really believe it, but it's good enough.
I mean, the Padres have a lower implied run total.
Yeah, very true.
But yeah, no, I mean, I like I said, the Sims video, I was heavy on Darvish. I was over the field on Barrios. If it's completely flipped, then I'm heavy on the Blue Jays and over the field on the Padres going into lock. I wouldn't care. They're all just kind of the same thing to me.
Yeah. Oh, God, it's so weird. 98 park factor for runs on StatCast for just this year at the Rogers Center was 106 last year.
Yeah. 97 home run park factor for righties this year.
And it was massive last year, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, over the last 3 years, it's third highest. I don't remember what the actual number was, but
116 was their rolling right-handed.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah, and it was I even because I knew it had been I knew they had moved the dimensions and I knew it was down this year, but earlier I was curious, so I just found an article for what they had done exactly. And from the article though, it's still tough to make like a good hypothesis for what it's going to be long term because it's like, oh well, this wall got moved in 15 feet and also made like 4 feet higher, in like a lot of spots. So it's like, okay, well, which one of those is going to win out?
Yeah. Angels and Yankees. 4-run implied total for the Angels, 4.7 for the Yankees. Chase Silseth, which is a very difficult name to say, and Carlos Rodon going in this one. No ownership coming into Silseth, so I'm pretty excited to not have to say that again. Carlos Rodon, on the other hand, 33% owned at 8,500. I don't know how to get away from this ownership because he's just not priced correctly.
Yeah, he looks good. I mean, whatever risks you want to bring up with Carlos Rodon, it's his third start back from the injured list. Obviously, there's going to be some, more volatility than usual there. He's pitching in Anaheim, good hitters park. The Angels have plenty of power in their lineup, although tonight's lineup is not the best. But whatever reasons you want to say that you're scared to play Rodon, it's just offset by this salary. He's a $10,000+ pitcher over the last however many years when he's healthy. And now he's $8,500 coming off of an 88 pitch start last time out. I'm sure the Yankees aren't going to let him go throw a complete game, 120 pitches or anything, but there's no real reason to think he's not throwing 90+ pitches here as long as he's pitching well. And this price tag just looks really good. So, 30+% strikeout percentage over the last couple of years. Since the start of last year, about a 32% K percentage to righties, 35% to lefties, doesn't give up production to either side of the plate. It's really tough for me to get away from that salary.
I don't see a way around it. I really, really don't. Do you want any of Chase?
No.
Okay.
Not particularly.
Okay.
He's 7K. He's most of his time in the majors this year has been out of the bullpen. He made 9 starts at AAA, 42 innings pitched. Did strike out 26.8% with a 3.48 FIP, so that's good. Projects for like a 23% strikeout percentage going forward. It's not like it's a bad matchup against the Yankees. I guess I would throw him into like the Kyle Hendricks category where they're both, 1 to 2% owned in that 7K range. I don't really want either one, but if you are, let's say, 5-man stacking the Braves or the Blue Jays, like one of these expensive teams, and you just land on him, fine, but it's not a spot that I'm seeking out.
What do you want to do with the Yankees bats? They are second in aggregate ownership at around 11%, fifth in top stack, fourth in top value. This is a team that I see as a pretty easy fade.
They were my highest owned stack in the Sims video earlier.
All right, let's do it.
If that changes, fine. It's not like I love the Yankees themselves. It's more what you can get with them. Peraza's leading off again, 3K flat, second base, third base eligible. So it's very easy to get him into lineups. He showed up in like 30+% of the lineups in my Sims video earlier. So you have that. Torres and Stanton, both relatively expensive. And then the rest of the lineup is just free. You have DJ LeMahieu, 2,900 batting cleanup with MPE. Volpe's batting 5th, 3,400. Franchi Cordero's back at 3,100. Bader's 36. Like this team is just so cheap. So 4.6 implied run total, good hitters park. It's not a situation where the Yankees are showing up a lot because, they're the best stack on the slate. Like, how do they miss? It's more so you can get to them. You can play them with Rodon, Castillo, pair them with Guerrero, Springer, like I mentioned earlier, pair them with, whatever you want. And so you're just going to get some really good looking lineups, and they're not getting as much ownership as some of the other teams. You can get similar teams, similar construction to like the Giants where everybody's going to go, but with a lower owned stack. So I think that's why they were showing up, but it's not a very good offense. I don't mind if I don't get to them, but good park, good prices. You can just build really strong lineups around them.
So that's the interesting piece for me, and that's what's throwing me off. You mentioned the Giants. They're owned the same as the Yankees right now. We have them directly next to each other in aggregate ownership. And if that's the case, like I just want the Giants instead.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit misleading because of Peraza.
Probably, yeah.
Peraza's projected for 20% ownership. Then it's Yastrzemski, Peterson, Conforto, Torres, Bailey, Volpe, Wade, who I don't think is going to play. But it's skewed, like in terms of the players that are getting ownership, number of players, it's skewed toward the Giants. It's just that Peraza's projected to be the most popular guy of either team.
Yeah. Yeah, like I'm getting to a bunch of the Giants. I'm not getting to the Yankees. I think I'm okay with that, but
Yeah,
that could very
individually,
easily
Yankee
change.
stacks are lower owned.
Sure, I do agree with you there. I was surprised to see the Yankees pulling as much ownership as they were, just given how many teams have like pretty solidly above 5-run implied totals. So we're going to hit on a bunch of different offenses here, and that's going to get us to a point where it starts to get pretty interesting. Any Angels bats on the opposite side against Rodon, other than obviously like
Shohei Ohtani's really good. But it's pretty tough to get to the Angels if you were looking to get there. I think the selling point, one, is that Rodon's going to be really popular, and it's his third start back. Who knows? Maybe he sucks. And then two, the Angels are really cheap in a good park, but you have so many good offenses today that are inexpensive. I don't think the Angels look that good. And then also, obviously no Trout makes this lineup look worse. No Rendon, who hasn't been hitting for power, but his name at least looks good. Like, you have Eduardo Escobar hitting fifth. The 7, 8, 9 is Rengifo, Stefanich, and Wallach. Like, the top of this order is fine, but as a stack, they look pretty unappealing.
Rank the game.
Rodon, Yankees, Angels, or Silsa.
That'll work for me. Guys, hit that like button. 400 people in the door, 71 likes. Schedule for the rest of the day, very easy. MLB Live Before Lock comes up next. And then PGA Live Before Lock tonight at 8 p.m. We've got the Open Championship coming up. Lock is at like 1 a.m. or something like that, East Coast time. So be ready for that one. Got to make sure that I don't forget to put my round one showdown stuff in. Favorite tournament in golf. So I'm excited for it. I hope you guys are as well. Make sure you're watching PGA Live Before Lock. And then make sure that you're signing up at BetMGM. Link in the description if you are in a legal sports betting state. This is the deal for you. You get 1 free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. So you'll get access to everything we have on Stochastic behind the paywall, except for the Sims tool. That's going to be outside the purview. And you get up to $1,000 back in bet credits. So if you put in $1,000 to start, they will match that first bet. If it wins, you don't worry about anything else. That money just stays in your account. It's just yours. If it happens to lose, you get that $1,000 back in bet credits. But don't get scared over the $1,000 number. If you have $100 to put in and you put $100 down on that first bet, you can get $100 back in bet credits if it loses. So whatever sort of amount that you're looking to start your day off with at BetMGM, all the way up to $1,000, you can do that and get it back in bet credits if you happen to lose. Legal age for gambling in most states is 21 or over. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. 5.1 run implied total for the Mets, 3.7 for the White Sox. Justin Verlander and Touki Toussaint, 8,800 for Verlander, 31% owned. Toussaint is 6,900 unowned. Let's start with Verlander here. I don't want to have as much as I do, but I do.
Yep, same page. $8,800. What the ownership at first glance is concerning. Getting 30.5% ownership. It's sort of like, okay, should he really be that much more popular than Maeda, Darvish, Barrios? Given the struggles that he's had this year, but he projects really well, and you have a good park, second best pitchers park over the last 3 years, just behind, I guess, T-Mobile in Seattle. But second best pitchers park. White Sox offense has been terrible all year long. This particular lineup looks pretty bad. And we do expect, Verlander to pick up the strikeout stuff going forward. He still projects for about a 25% strikeout percentage rest of season. He's at 20% so far this year. I'm going to get a good amount. Whether or not I get to the field or not is certainly a question. In the Sims video earlier, I got like 27%, and I think at the time he was projected for like 35. So, it was a little bit under the field, but still getting plenty. I don't really see an easy way to get away from him, just because it goes back to kind of what we were talking about on the show this morning. Somebody said that they weren't going to play Sandy Alcantara, and it was like, that's fine. I don't think he's a great play, but who are you playing? Because there's not so that's sort of the thing is, I think it's completely reasonable to, if you're playing a bunch of lineups, say, well, instead of 30% Verlander, I'm going to play 20% and I'm going to get more of Darvish, Barrios, Maeda, whatever it is. But if you just say like, oh, I'm not playing Verlander, are you really that much more comfortable playing 30% Darvish or 30% Barrios or whatever? So even though I'm not comfortable with it, he does look like one of the best options.
58% Justin Verlander right now. It's going to be one of those days. I'm going to be looking at Kate Upton pictures for a couple hours. least I'll get something good out of it. Any Toussaint?
Throw him in the bucket with Silseth, I guess. I think I would rather go to Silseth just because the Yankees offense is worse than the Mets. You have a 5.4 implied run total here. Tough to strike out. Good hitters. The one good thing for Toussaint is that, while he's been up and down over the last few years, he doesn't give up a ton of power. Going back to the start of the 2021 season, 174 expected ISO to lefties, 116 to righties. Since last year, it's 113 to lefties, sub 100 to righties. So not a huge sample size, but he has been pretty good at limiting power. Still a pretty inconsistent pitcher, has trouble throwing strikes, and it's just a good Mets offense with a lot of good hitters, and they are tough to strike out.
Well, let's talk about those Mets hitters then. Second in ownership, third in top stack, second in top value. I am quite a bit lower than we are on the New York Mets. So I'm going to hear something very different than whatever you're going to say, but I don't have the Mets.
So I was getting them second to the Yankees in the Sims video. It's another spot, though, where I understand why it was happening, and I don't have a problem with it. They do have a 5.4 implied run total despite this park. They are cheap. You have Alonso at 4,900 on DraftKings, Lindor at 4,700. Other than that, Nimmo's 41. Everybody else is sub 4K. So you're once again just in a spot where you can get a team with a 5.4 implied run total, grab 5 of those guys, and pretty much do whatever you want around them in terms of pitching, one-offs, secondary stacks, whatever it may be. So the upside is there. I don't like the park. It's not good for power. Toussaint, like I said, isn't bad at limiting power. It's more so he just puts guys on base. But if I get to them again, like I was in the Sims video, I'm fine with it because I do think you get very strong lineups in terms of upside. I just don't like the park. That's kind of my one negative here.
I find the Mets and Yankees both fascinating today. Both teams pulling a pretty sizable amount of ownership. Which New York team would you rather have?
At given ownership, probably the Yankees.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what it is that's driving them down for me, but I do not have these dudes.
Nobody on the Mets is projected for as much ownership as Peraza is, but you have 6 guys projected between 10 and 16%. Lindor, Nimmo, Alvarez, Pham, Alonso, McNeil. Whereas with the Yankees, you got a pretty steep drop-off after Peraza.
I don't know what to do with them, but somebody from New York is going to kill me tonight.
Yeah, and the Angels Park is better. But again, like I said, these were my top 2 stacks in the Sims video earlier.
They are my 2 biggest. I'm fading New York aggressively. I like this. If this happens the way that it's going right now, then you and I are going to be on opposite sides of everything, and maybe one of us can win tonight. Because when we're in lockstep, we get wrecked. White Sox bats here against Verlander?
It's tough. I mean, he hasn't been good this year, but it's kind of like, where do you go? Yasmani Grandal at 2,800, I guess, is kind of interesting. Luis Robert is the guy that you always like to get to from this team, but he's 6K, so that's a pretty tough sell. Berger got moved up to the cleanup spot at 4,100. Sheets is in there at 2,200. So, like, there is some cheap power, but this park just kills power. 3.7 implied run total. I think the biggest selling point for the White Sox is probably the same one that I mentioned for the Angels. If Justin Verlander sucks, you just killed, a third of the field and they're unowned. But outside of that, they're very much a team where, like, if you're playing smaller field stuff or stuff with flatter payout structures, I don't think there's any reason to even think about the White Sox. If you're playing, the 12,000 or 15,000, whatever it is, entry 50K to first, then maybe you get to some White Sox.
Rank the game?
Verlander, Mets, Toussaint, or White Sox.
The Cincinnati Reds are hosting the San Francisco Giants. 5.2 run implied total for the Reds, 5.3 for the Giants. Graham Ashcraft, 5,800, unowned. Ross Stripling, 6K, unowned. Do you have any interest in either of the pitchers since they're cheap?
I do not.
Okie doke. That's an interesting report. James Harden intends to play for the Clippers next season, per Jake Fisher. That's an interesting statement. Anyway, what do you think the reason is that the Giants are still free?
That what?
Like, why are the Giants still free?
Oh, free.
3 games into this stupid series.
I thought you said 3. I was like, 3 what?
No.
I don't know. Incompetence?
Yeah, that's fair. Well, let's start with the Giants side of this one. First in top stack, first in top value, fourth in ownership on the last pull of the top stacks tool. But, we got the top 4 teams sort of all jumbled together. What are you going to do with the San Francisco Giants here?
They came in third for me in the Sims tool earlier. So even at their ownership, they were showing up quite a bit because, again, they're cheap. You can just build whatever lineups you want around them. You're going to get to it later. But when you look at top stack percentage on this slate, it's the Giants and the Braves, and then just a drop off to pretty much everybody else lumped together. But the big difference is that the Braves are all like 5,500 plus, and nobody on the Giants is above 4,400. So you just get such better teams around the Giant stacks than you do the Braves. It forced me, I was getting to Braves hitters even higher than the field, but it was, one-offs and two-mans, whereas the Giants as a 5-man stack just looks really, really good. So I still like getting to them. The ownership isn't out of control. You have 5 guys, basically 6 if you round up, between 10 and 15% ownership right now. We do have Lamont Wade projected in. I doubt he's going to play. If he does, he's a really good play, but left yesterday's game with a hamstring injury. So either way, you're going to have a lot of just good power in this lineup. Ashcraft doesn't give up a ton of power, but he also doesn't miss bats. And this park is just so good for hitting. So far this season, 140 expected ISO to lefties for Ashcraft, 175 to righties. His actual ISO allowed is higher to both sides, which isn't surprising. 1.33 home runs per 9. Just doesn't strike guys out. And I think it might get slept on a little bit, like because the Giants play in San Francisco, and so a lot of times for DFS, you're not really looking at them because that park is so difficult for home runs. They have legitimate power on this team. Against right-handed pitching this year, Lamont Wade, who again may not play, but 215 expected ISO. Jock Peterson, 260. Conforto, 179. Flores, 186. Yastrzemski, 223. Bailey, 201. Davis, 154. Sable, 208. Like this team for most of their lineup is just guys that hit for power. They're really cheap. They're in a great park against a pitcher that doesn't miss bats.
What do you want to do with the Reds side? 8th in ownership, half of all of these teams that we've been talking about that are pulling some ownership, 4th in our top stack tool. They are the opposite of free, but to me, worth it. But I did this yesterday and it didn't work. So
yeah, so this one
sort of worked.
This one's interesting to me, kind of similar to the Braves. We actually have them right next to each other in stack score. In terms of top stack percentage, we have the Reds 4th at 8%. It's just that they're so expensive. And when you have not just the Giants, but the Yankees, the Mets, like these other teams that are so cheap, there's so many teams that are cheap, it makes it even more difficult to get to the Reds because it's not as simple as saying, well, if the Giants score 3 runs, everybody's screwed because they went there. And, so I'm going to just pay up for the Reds and hope that they outscore the Giants. You really need the Reds to outscore all of these cheap teams, which is obviously pretty unlikely, but the upside is there. De La Cruz, you're certainly overpaying from a median standpoint, but he's got one of the highest ceilings there is just because of his ability to steal and hit for power. Friedel, McLean, Friedel, Steer, Votto, Stevenson, all like reasonably priced. McLean at 5,700 is absurd, but again, he's a good hitter. He's just not 5,700. I do like that you have Encarnacion Strand in there. Talked about it the other day, but that's a $2,500 price tag that can offset some of these other bats, at least to some extent. And he does have big time power. So using him in stacks makes it a little bit easier. But I think this is another team where it's likely I'm, 2-man stacking or running one-offs because they are in a good spot. Stripling's given up plenty of power this year. You're getting a negative park shift going into Cincinnati. It's just that your lineup as a whole, what you can do around the Reds becomes so limited compared to what you can do with these other cheap teams.
Right now, I've got a bunch of both of these teams. So I am getting to the Giants over the Yankees, over the Mets. I'm just loaded up there. But I am getting to the Reds. I have 27 5-man Reds stacks. I'm just sort of cornering the market on this offense. And if they're all going to be in single digits of ownership, I'm happy to double up across the board for Cincinnati and just hope that they're the team on this 8-gamer and they just go insane in their absolute ridiculous ballpark. But I'm betting on offense here. I thought the ownership on the Giants would be a little bit more extreme today. Maybe that'll expand a bit. But since it's not, I'm going to find myself in this game more than any other game. I certainly don't mind it for the Reds since they're 8th in ownership.
Yeah, the Reds are one of those teams where I personally have trouble getting a lot of times to the really expensive teams that, the ones where it's like, well, their ceiling's really high, but you're also paying for it. I like the idea of getting to them. I just have trouble doing it.
All righty. Anything else we should be touching on here for this game? I'd say rank it, but it's Giants, Reds, and then you stop. So there's not a lot to talk about here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, just to reiterate, like the Giants look really good. And I think there's different ways you can use the Giants too. I talked about how easy they are as a 5-man stack, but if you are somehow 5-man stacking the Braves, mix in a couple Giants, that helps you offset it. If you're 5-man stacking the Reds, mix in a couple Giants. Like there's just so many ways you can use these guys.
Just looking at this on the surface, does it surprise you to show the Giants at 14% top stack and the Reds at 8%?
A little bit.
I think they're basically equal.
I'll say I think they should be closer.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me that the stack score favors the Giants by so much.
No, not at all. I mean, their price tags are insane.
Right.
Yeah, they should be beating them when you start factoring in value. But like overall ceiling, based on what I'm looking at right now, I like the Reds because of that. I think that's why they're sort of getting slept on. Because if their top stack was like 9 or 10 and the Giants wasn't 14, it was 12. That really changes the equation in the tools. So interesting to talk about. You know what else is interesting, Adam?
I'm hoping you're going to do a read so I can sneeze.
Boom Fantasy. They are the presenting sponsor of this show. 2 different things that you can do right now. 1, this is the easy piece. When you sign up, you get a no sweat $100 first entry. So right away, that piece is very easy. But they've also got like a free square, which is actually a hilarious free square. Julio Rodriguez, under 995.5 home runs. Do you think Julio Rodriguez is going to be able to hit 1,000 homers today?
Yes.
You taking the over on that one? Smart play. Well, the free square for Julio Rodriguez will be able to hook you up. If you put down, it's a $10 max entry when you use Julio Rodriguez. It has to be a 2-leg entry to use that free play, but you're basically turning a 2-pick into a 1-pick because Julio Rodriguez is not going to hit 1,000 home runs today. I'm quite confident in that number. Take advantage of this deal at Boom Fantasy. The promo code is Stochastic1. Click the link in the description. Get yourself some extra cash. That's the whole basis of these things. When we tell you all of these deals for the sites that we're referencing, the key piece for you is to be able to build up a bankroll. Take the free money everywhere that you can get it. Hash it out later once you've dealt with everything. Figure out what you like the most and stay at those places. But take advantage of the free money. Free money is always the best thing you can do. You like free money, right?
Speaking of free money, my currently winning doubled during that read. Or at some point since last time I
was it another? I saw another 2-run homer for the A's. I saw, that's for sure.
Yeah, maybe that was it. But I went from being down like 80% to like 60%.
Let's see if I had any reversal of fortune. My assumption is that I didn't.
I forgot about John Gray. I had 40% of him, and he left with another injury.
Mine went up by 20% as well. So whatever happened, it helped us both because I went from 500 currently winning to 600 currently winning. Neither one of those feel any better, but
nope.
Did somebody get a win or something?
I don't think anybody can get wins today.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, geez, Bayo, negative 1.8. Unbelievable.
We were on like pretty opposite things too, and both just getting crushed.
Yeah, I wasn't. Neither one of us were on the Orioles, unfortunately, which I assume is the key to it all. Or the Orioles?
I don't know. Like, they didn't even do that well. I mean, Gunnar homered.
There's not an Oriole in the first or in the winning lineup. Oh no, sorry, Gunnar is the only one. Solo job. Texas, Houston, Tampa, Texas, Baltimore, Houston, Texas.
Yeah, one of those days.
You needed the 13.5 out of Sandy and the crisp 7 out of Waldachuk so far. I mean, anybody could win this right now. These guys are all separated by like a half point. One home run changes everything.
5% owned, 24 points. Plus Henderson.
Good God.
Oh, plus Jonah Heim. So yeah, you need like Tavares, Heim, Henderson to be live.
Yeah. Good riddance. Early slate.
I guess
good
Gorman
riddance.
Also. Or yeah, Gorman could be in there too. But
yeah. Braves and Diamondbacks, 5.8 run implied total for the Braves, 4.2 for the Diamondbacks. Charlie Morton and Ryan Nelson. No ownership coming into Nelson, 28% ownership coming into Charlie Morton. He is 9,100. I'm a little light here. I'm honestly kind of surprised just based on the way that I looked at the rest of the slate. 4.2 run implied total looks pretty good for Morton. How do you want to handle him?
So he was my highest owned pitcher in the Sims video. I'm hoping that doesn't end up being the case here. I think he's a good play. 3.9 implied run total for Arizona right now. Morton's a good pitcher. It's still a tough matchup. The Diamondbacks are a quality lineup. They just have a lot of good hitters. But, 9,100 for Morton on a slate without a lot of good pitching certainly makes sense. You said 28% ownership, 22% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, in addition to about a 13% chance of being a top 2 value pitcher for the season. 25.7% strikeout percentage, 3.86 xFIP. He's good. And on this slate, for the most part, being good just makes you a 20+% owned pitcher because most of these guys are in tough matchups and a lot of them are also bad. So Morton looks fine. I don't look at his ownership like, oh, I really want to be under the field. I really want to be over the field. I think it's pretty much where it should be.
All right. Yeah, I have 17% right now. Somewhere in that 20% range is going to totally work for me. I don't assume we're going to talk about Ryan Nelson. So let's talk about the Braves, 5th in ownership. But honestly, everything at the top is sort of owned the same. And then it kind of falls off a cliff for every other team. 2nd in top stack, dead last in top value. This is my number 1 stack in terms of top stack score. I think the Braves look the best of anybody. That said, they are pulling a decent amount of ownership. I'm going to have them, but not as crazy as I normally do. I have 19 5-mans. Go Atlanta.
Yeah. So I was having trouble getting to a lot of 5-mans earlier. I had like 7% in the Sims video of 5-mans, but I was over the field on Acuna. I was over the field on Albies and on Riley. I don't remember specifically anybody else, but I know at least those guys. So this was a team that you certainly want to get to them. Ryan Nelson's not very good. He struggles against lefties in particular. Matt Olson, at least when I looked earlier, was 1st in home run percentage in our top batters tool and makes a lot of sense. 228 expected ISO to lefties, 380 expected WOBA to lefties for Nelson this year. Truist Park over the last 3 years, 7th best home run park factor for left-handed bats. Matt Olson looks fantastic. Albies is obviously good. Michael Harris batting 9th at 4,100 looks good. Rosario's fine. But Matt Olson really stands out. And then obviously Acuna, Riley, Murphy, just 3 of the best plays at their respective positions. So this was a team, like I said, I was getting over on the players individually. I wasn't necessarily getting over on them as a 5-man stack because 5-man stacking them, especially if it's the top part of the order, is how you end up going to guys like Kyle Hendricks, Chase Silseth, which again isn't the end of the world, but given how many pretty good cheap stacks there are, it was showing up for me more like, okay, let's get to these cheap stacks as our primary stacks and then just mix in the Acuna, Riley, Albies type plays.
I'm very surprised to see Atlanta and San Francisco so close in top stack today because I think it's Atlanta by a mile. But, that's me. I got a lot of these dudes. 27% Matt Olson at 12% ownership. Like, sign me up for any multiple I can get above that dude for today because it couldn't look much better.
He's the best hitting player on the slate, right? Well, salary agnostic, he's the best hitting player on the slate, right?
Yeah, probably. I didn't run my my optimal sim for it, but I assume he's one of the top 5 at the very least. You don't get a much better game script than that, that's for sure. The only thing that might stop him is just simply hitting 4th instead of 1st for like Acuna. Yeah, it's basically like an extra half a plate appearance at that point. Like it's hard to make up for it, but no, I mean it's on paper just looks amazing. Going to have a lot of Atlanta. Happy to do it too. Do you want to get to any Arizona? 11th in ownership, 11th in top stack, 12th in top value.
Not really. I mean, Morton's good. 113 expected ISO to lefties, 30.7% strikeout percentage. He has had some issues with righties. Only a 21% strikeout percentage, 207 expected ISO. $5,100 Christian Walker was very necessary yesterday, somehow making Josh Naylor's 2 home runs irrelevant by beating him by like 12 points. But, from a home run standpoint, Walker, Gurriel, that's, pretty much your right-handed power. Longoria, Moreno's cheap, but the Diamondbacks are good. Corbin Carroll is obviously always a good play. So is Marte, but I don't think there's somebody I'm going to get to that often in tournaments. Right now, they're middle of the pack in stack score. 5% chance to be in the top stack. So middle of the pack there, 5% ownership. They're just another team.
If you just told me Austin Riley's fantasy score yesterday, I would have assumed that I won all of the money. And like
He
I
wasn't even the highest
wrecked.
score on the slate.
I thought he was. Did he get
Did
passed? Or maybe that was FanDuel.
I mean, it was close. Last night I looked, I thought Walker had 46 and Riley had 45.
It might have been. I think I saw it with him on top on FanDuel, but ultimately, like either way, if I would have just saw his score, it would have been like, oh, I must be smashing because I had him in like 50% of my lineups last night, and that shit didn't matter at all.
Yeah, 46 for Walker, 45 for Riley.
Okay. Either way, insane scores too. Rank the game.
I guess Morton just because he's gonna be easier to get to. Then Braves, then Diamondbacks, then Nelson.
Cubs and Nats, 5-run implied total for the Cubbies, 4.2 for the Nats. Kyle Hendricks and Trevor Williams. No ownership coming into either guy. Hendricks is 7,200. Trevor Williams, 6,500. Any reason you're going to either one of these pitchers?
Not unless it's just, the random Brave stack where they show up. Hendricks is an okay pitcher, but he's not a good strikeout pitcher. It's not a good strikeout matchup. On the other side, Williams has a 24% strikeout percentage against righties this year, but you are getting a pretty balanced lineup from the Cubs. Tauchman, Happ, Bellinger, 3 lefties in the top 4. Then you have Mastroboni hitting 7th and Barnhart hitting 9th from the left side. So, yeah, I mean, he's cheap, but it's not neither pitcher is somebody that I want to get to. I would anticipate getting to Hendricks before I got to Williams.
Mastroboni, that must have been a rough childhood.
Yeah.
You're getting every joke all the time. I would have loved it if he were like my opponent. Like yelling,
I also assume he was an elite athlete for his childhood and probably didn't get made fun of that much.
Well, you talk that smack, and then he hits one like halfway up the mountain behind wherever the Little League field was.
Right. I'm sure in a competitive environment, people were talking shit to him, but I don't think he was getting bullied at school.
Oh, no. Not so much. I hope not, at least. He should have smacked some people around.
Pete Alonso did, so I guess.
Did you play against anybody when you were a kid that was just like on a different planet?
So I only played against him once, but LJ Hose, who got drafted by the Orioles.
I got Hose.
Yeah. I remember going to play against his team when I was 12, and parents from other teams, in the week or two before, would be like, oh, just wait till you see this kid on Pasadena or whatever it was. And so, yeah, him for sure.
Okay. Yeah. I just I didn't have anybody that ended up being anything, but there were the kids you knew that were good at the time. And I think this ball still hasn't landed, but he hit it so far up this mountain. And it's just I wouldn't no matter what that kid would have done, I would have never talked shit to him. I was just I wanted to be on his team. He was awesome. Right. So if he could have been Mastroboni, it wouldn't have mattered at all. Let's talk bats here. 3rd in ownership for the Cubbies, 6th in top stack, 2nd in value. This is another team. Add them to the list with the Mets. Add them to the list with the Yankees, where they're getting a bunch of ownership. I'm there right now. I don't really think that I want to be, but I think that at some point in time, I got to pick one of these teams, and it appears to me that I'm getting to the Cubs, and I don't like it.
I don't have a problem with it. Williams gives up power to both sides of the plate. Bellinger at 4,400 looks pretty good. And then the rest of this team is just cheap. Horner also at 4,600, but Tauchman's cheap leading off, and Happ's not having a good year. But as a result, he's only $3,400 going up against a pitcher in Williams that so far this year has actually given up less power to lefties than righties, but historically is much worse against lefties. This year, he's just giving up power to everybody. So he's going to look good. Suzuki, same kind of thing as Happ, not having a good year, but has power. Morel's back in the lineup after being a late scratch yesterday. He's 4,300 with a lot of power. So I think the Cubs are fine, especially if you're not getting to the Yankees, not getting to the Mets. It makes sense that you'd be getting more Cubs.
CJ Cron dinger. That's going to mess some shit up at the top, I'm sure. Yeah. Not for me, but I'll take what I can get. Yeah, I'm going to end up getting to the Cubs, and I just don't like that. I just don't like their current situation. When I get away from the Cubs, I'll probably end up on the Yankees or Mets, but we'll see what that ends up being. What about the Nats? 10th in top stack, 5th in top value. Are they getting slept on a little bit? Are they? I mean, I guess this is just because of pitching, but I don't think that this is that different of an offense than Chicago.
I think that they're pretty interesting, at least as ways that you can mix them into like better stacks. There's nothing wrong with going to like a 5-man Washington stack here. Hendricks isn't great, but he has struggled specifically with left-handed power this year. 195 expected ISO to lefties. You have a $3,200 CJ Abrams leading off at shortstop. You have a $3,500 Keibert Ruiz hitting fifth. Those guys look really interesting to me. Your boy Candelario's hitting third. Dominic Smith and Corey Dickerson are both free, hitting sixth and seventh. Garcia's free, hitting eighth as well. So you do have left-handed hitters here. It's Abrams and Ruiz that really stand out because shortstop is typically a difficult position to find upside, and Abrams gives it to you. Same goes for catcher with Ruiz. But like, let's say you're 5-man stacking the Braves. In this example, obviously you're not using Murphy, but let's say you're going Acuna, Albies, Riley, Olsen, Harris, and Abrams and Ruiz fit perfectly into a team like
that. I would have really appreciated winning that 100K 2 days ago. Not just because of the money, but the fact that Candelario was in that lineup.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I would have got every one of his jerseys. I would have had to.
We got the Giants lineup. It's good. It's not quite as good as expected. Okay. It's cheaper than expected. Luis Matos is batting fifth, and David Villar is in the lineup at 2K flat, hitting seventh. No Patrick Bailey, no JD Davis, and then no Wade.
Winnings are back down again. Anything else you want to talk about for this game? Cubs and Nats?
Nope.
Rank the game?
Cubs, Nats, Hendricks, Williams.
There it is. Adams Royals have a 3.8 run implied total against the Detroit Tigers. The Tigers are at 4.7. Ryan Yarbrough going for Kansas City. Don't think I knew he was on the Royals. Eduardo Rodriguez going for the Tigers. 22% owned at 9,500. We know that the matchup is good. What do you want to do with Erod here?
I think he looks good. I wasn't getting as much of him in the Sims video as the field, but again, it's not something where I'm looking at that and my takeaway is Rodriguez is a bad play. My takeaway is in the lineups that I happened to simulate, I was just not getting to as much of him. I was getting to pitchers that are a little bit cheaper, getting more Darvish, Barrios, for example, and not paying all the way up to 9,500. But 3.9 implied run total for Kansas City. Rodriguez has a 26.8% strikeout percentage this year, almost identical to Castillo. 3.5 xFIP is better than Castillo. He just looks good. And if you can find that extra salary to get to him, then by all means.
I have 0 of Eduardo Rodriguez. Did not see that one coming. Not really happy about it, given the fact that Kansas City's on the opposite side with a massive strikeout rate and a tiny ass implied total. But for right now, I don't have him.
They do have Salvador Perez back, which makes it a little bit worse for Rodriguez.
Okay. We're not talking about Ryan Yarbrough, right?
I wasn't planning on it.
Okie doke. So then let's talk about offenses. Tigers are 8th in ownership. Royals are 12th. Tigers don't exactly rank very well in any of this stuff. Royals certainly don't. Do you like offense here?
Actually, I'm going to walk it back a little bit. If you're playing a team like the Braves, I think Yarbrough's actually decent.
Go for it.
He's $5,500 and he's facing the Tigers.
That's fair.
Stretched out.
I haven't needed to get to him. Like, I've got 70% Castillo, 58 of Verlander, 45 of Rodon. It's not stopping me from getting the Reds. It's not stopping me from getting the Braves. So I'm happy that I'm not getting Yarbrough, but maybe that changes in a little bit.
In that case, that's fine. But I mean, he in his first start back from the injured list, he threw 78 pitches in 6 innings. He's 5,500. So he's a starting pitcher at 5,500 against the Tigers on a slate where you have the Braves and you have the Reds. So could certainly be useful. But again, like if you can build those lineups with Rodon and whoever, then obviously that's the preference.
Yeah. Go ahead. Talk about your Royals bets.
Garcia, Witt, Perez, all reasonably priced, all decent value plays, all give you plenty of upside at their respective positions. Don't expect getting to get a lot of Kansas City. This slate is a little bit different than the slates where I normally jam in Kansas City because there are so many other cheap teams. Like a lot of times the reason I'm jamming KC is that they're cheap and the lineups around them are so good. Whereas here it's like, okay, well, we've already named 5 other teams that are priced the same way as Kansas City.
You want to take a guess at what Matt Duffy's projected ISO is in Steamer? He's a flat 2K MPE today.
0.78.
If only you were had a problem with flipping numbers around. 0.087.
That would have been great if I just nailed it.
No, it wouldn't have. I wouldn't have believed you at that point. I would have assumed you were cheating. Tigers bats. Is there anything that stands out here? I don't really like this game in general, other than like I think that Erod is good. I just don't happen to have him.
Right. And I think Yarborough is mediocre at best. The value component here, Matt Vierling and Spencer Torkelson in particular, 3,800 for Torkelson, 3,200 for Vierling. I think Torkelson hit 2 home runs yesterday, and it was just like completely irrelevant. Nobody even noticed. 2 home runs.
I think 100 guys hit 2 dongs yesterday.
Yeah, 39 DraftKings points. So just another guy that somehow beat Josh Naylor yesterday. But yeah, I mean, I think those two in particular look pretty, I don't know if good's the right word, but playable. Vierling and Torkelson are the Tigers version of Abrams and Ruiz for me.
There we go. Guy I have the most of is Baez, 4,400, but
yeah, nothing wrong with that.
No.
I mean, other than him sucking at baseball, but other than that.
Yep, exactly. Rank the game. I assume it's Royals, bats, and then what?
Rodriguez, Tigers, Royals, Yarborough. But again, this is like, I think this game, my exposures to this game will depend heavily on like what else I'm doing in my lineups. Like, it wouldn't shock me if somehow Yarborough is the guy that I get to. I don't want that to be the case. I would love to get to Rodriguez the most, but
it's one of those situations where it's like those flow charts. Like, are you stacking the Braves?
Right.
Yes. Then Ryan Yarborough is second.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Are you not stacking Atlanta or the Reds? No. Well, then don't play Ryan Yarborough.
Right. I assume there's a good chance Bobby Witt's my highest owned guy for the game.
Okay. Final game, folks. Hit that like button if you haven't done it already. Remember, MLB Live before lock coming up next. We have the Mariners, 3.9 run implied total. We have the Twins, 3.4. Luis Castillo going for Seattle, 46% owned at 9,300. Kenta Maeda on the opposite side, 7,800, 12% owned. Those people that are rostering Kenta Maeda have to deal with the fact that Julio Rodriguez might hit 1,000 home runs today. What do you want to do with Luis Castillo?
Play him. It hasn't worked out the first 2 times with the Mariners pitchers. You know, Gilbert was underwhelming. Wu was flat out bad. But it's still the best pitcher's park in baseball. It's still a Twins lineup that strikes out a lot. Now, it's not necessarily a bad lineup overall. Their active roster against right-handed pitching this year has a 112 WRC plus, but 28% strikeout percentage. Castillo is obviously a very good pitcher. 26.9% K percentage, 3.73 xFIP. He looks like the best pitcher today. He's getting 46% ownership. You know, is he that much better than the field that he's getting 1.5 times the ownership of any other pitcher? Probably not, but he does project the best. And so as long as you're different somewhere else, he's going to be showing up a good amount. I assume I'll be in that 40% range on Castillo.
Yeah, I've got 70 and I'm cool with it. If you were in everything, it'd be fine with me based on this slate. Like, that's just the perils of this one. I'm going to go to him the same way that I jammed Wu and the same way that I jammed Logan Gilbert. I'm jamming Luis Castillo.
And I was pretty much around the field on Wu. I was around the field on Gilbert. So and in the Sims video today, I was around the field on Castillo. I assume that I will just be around the field on Castillo.
What about Maeda?
I think he's interesting given the lack of ownership. Yeah. I don't know how deep into this game he'll go from a pitch count standpoint, but you know, he hasn't thrown more than 87 pitches this year. But in his 2 starts since coming, in his 2 most recent starts, he's made 4 starts since coming back. At least 80 pitches in all of them. 5 innings, 7 innings, 3 innings. The 3 innings, he walked 4 guys, gave up 3 earned runs, got to 80 pitches, came out. If you tell me he can go 5-6 innings, throw 85 pitches in a good strikeout matchup, you know, he struck out 26.6% of hitters this year. He has almost the same strikeout percentage as Castillo and Rodriguez, and he's a lot less expensive, so and not popular. So I do think he's at least interesting in tournaments.
I don't have any, but I do find him interesting at 7,800. Just a little nervous about the Mariners lineup, but at the same time, like, runs aren't great here. Righty power is what I don't want to say plays up in Seattle, but doesn't play down, I guess is probably the easier way to describe it. Are you getting to the offenses? Because this is not a game with a very high run total. 13th in ownership for Seattle, 16th, dead last for the Twins, and they are 15th and 16th in our top stacks tool.
Not much. I mean, the park sucks, like you said. If you wanted to look at Castillo splits this year, because he has had some home run issues overall, 1.36 home runs per nine. Lefties in particular have a 213 expected ISO. You have Julian, Kirilloff, Kepler, Wallner, Castro, all from the left side, 2 through 6. Then you have Gallo hitting 8th. If you wanted to try and grab a home run there, sure, but I'm not actively looking to get to the Twins. The Mariners are the Twins are dirt cheap. The Mariners are really cheap too. And so I think you could say the same thing about them that I have the last couple of slates. They're not any sort of a priority, but they do have these power bats that you can just stack together and then get really good one-offs and pitchers with them. But the reason it's not that appealing on a slate like this is it goes back to what we were talking about already. You can do that with the Cubs. You can do it with the Nats. You can do it with the Mets. You can do it with the Yankees. You can do it with the Giants. Like, there's so many teams that are in good spots. And because there's so many, the ownership is going to get spread out amongst them. It would be, the Mariners would be more interesting if, let's say the Giants are priced like they are, every other team is expensive, and the Mariners are priced like they are. I would love the Mariners because you get those really high upside teams with the Mariners instead of the Giants. But here it's just like, okay, well, ownership spread out everywhere. There's like 6 other teams you can go to that are in better spots and do the same thing.
Wow. I lost both of you there for a second. Didn't really matter because it's 5:59, but evidently
and you're gone.
My favorite hitters or favorite stacks, I guess, for today.
You froze. I didn't hear what you said other than favorite stacks.
That was it. Favorite stacks.
Giants, Mets, Yankees.
Favorite pitchers.
Castillo, Rodon, Verlander.
I keep freezing, I'm guessing.
Yep.
Favorite pitchers.
I answered you.
Oh, I never heard anything. It just all stopped. Well, let's get the hell out. Fantasy for sponsoring. Thanks to Jordan for producing. I'm going to get out of here. MLB Live Before Lock coming up next. Peace.
Yo, it's that time of week again. Time to induct some of you wonderful people into the Stochastic Hall of Fame here. And also give away a whole bunch of free subscriptions to Stochastic Plus Platinum, $120 value. And all you got to do to get in on this fun, crowning achievement, gather the family around, say, honey, I'm in the Stochastic Hall of Fame. Come watch. They're about to announce my name. Go to stochastic.com/avatar. Download the Stochastic profile picture. Tweet your wins when you win at Stochastic HOF on Twitter and win a free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. Get inducted right here. Finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, and boom, you are in. Just like our friend Zach Skaggs, the ever elusive double win. Thank you to the crew and all the tools over at Stochastic. Not getting the free month, but representing Stochastic here. I can appreciate that. 2,250 here in the squeeze and the line drive. Shout out to Zach for a really nice day. And our friend Kenneth Malakar. I don't know what to say. I want to thank all you guys for all the good advice, not to mention all of you guys in chat. Great community of people. Finally, the Hall of Fame, 3rd out of 7,400, $1,000 for a boy who has supported the channel and the site for a long time now. Congrats, Kenneth. We love to see it. And Timmy, first off, Lavi, I'm gonna be up here a lot now, so get it down. The TX is like a CH. So basically, Cha Kiang, listen, dude, I'm going to be doing this a lot as well, and I can assure you I will not get this down anytime soon, but congrats to Timmy. Love to see it. But, man, not a lot to most y'all, but I'm going to say this. I know nothing about golf, but making nice finishes goes to show you how it's getting done. Pay the man. $800 and a free month of Stochastic. Congrats, Timmy. I'm just kidding. Timmy Cha Kiang. And then how about Derby status or Perez status? 2nd day playing DFS, and I shipped the $1 25K mini max for $2,500 and placed second in the $3 MLB 20K moonshot for $1,000. All thanks to Stochastic and the guys there with the great insight and the MLB lineup generator. $4.48 for your first week. You know it. Link in the description, baby. Keith, I'm going to need a punch card at this rate. Yeah, he's been here. He's been up a lot lately. Keith, $300 in the 7,500 solo shot. Next up is Matt. Shout out to the team at Stochastic for helping me out last night. 350 win there in the 10K Wednesday MLB pinch hit. And we keep moving forward with David Colasanto. Almost hit a 4-figure payout twice in a week. I'll settle for second place and a $200 ROI. Thanks again for the advice. Hell yeah, man. Second place out of 7,100 in the mini max. Take that all day long. And Nate Larson, not enough entries to qualify for the free month, but shout out to the lineup generator. 2 of the top spots. I've said it a million times, guys, whether it's high stakes, low stakes, we got you covered. Just like internet points or it's depletes. Not quite enough to retire early, but who needs that when there's the Stochastic Hall of Fame? See this $25 and $8.50 in the nickel $600 prize pool, first out of 14,000. But as long as it's top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, and you're not chopping more than 3 ways, you're in. $120 free month. What better way to do it than that in some of these low stakes contests? Shout out to It's the Plates 99 and everybody else. Welcome to the Hall of Fame. You've now been inducted, or welcome back if you've been here before. Remember, download the stochastic.com/avatar. Tweet your wins at StochasticHOF and get that free month and get inducted every single Monday right here in the Hall of Fame.
What is happening, everybody? It's Wednesday night. It is time for MLB Live Before Live. We've got a really good 8-game slate that I'm excited to be breaking down, and there is nobody on this planet that I'd rather be breaking down with than my friend over here, Eric Lindquist. We're sponsored by Boom Fantasy, a new sponsor of ours. And if you guys look in the background of Eric there, we've got a really cool offer here from Boom Fantasy. So I know we always get these no-brainers that can't lose, but all of the no-brainers, this is the most no-brainer of the no-brainers, because for today, they have a prop on Julio Rodriguez over under 999.5 home runs. I'm siding with the under of that. And if you guys want access to this promo from Boom Fantasy, sign up using the promo code Stochastic1. There's a link below in the description box that you could use to download the Boom Fantasy app. You do have to download the app and get access to 999.5 homers, the under here for Julio Rodriguez. Not only is he not going to do that today, he's not going to do it for his career. He may not even do that if you doubled his entire career. Eric, I know that you're somebody who's considered pretty sharp in the sports betting space, posting a lot of good betting content to his Twitter account at Eric Lindquist. Saw it earlier on Braves -1.5, -120 today. But this is the real hard-hitting question when it comes to Boom Fantasy. You want the over or under on Julio Rodriguez?
You know, I don't even think Sean V can come up with a case that isn't on the under for this. I know he'll try. He'll come in and say that, oh, you know, Seattle, they just crush left-handed pitching, or they just crush, you know, something, you know, over the course of whatever. I bet he has less than 7 at-bats tonight, and I bet he goes under 999.5 home runs, not just today, for his career. I'm with you.
There we go. So Julio Rodriguez, under 999.5 home runs. If you guys want to sign up at Boom Fantasy, take advantage of the deposit bonus, and also get access to this freest of all free squares, go sign up using that promo code Stochastic1. Link in the description box to download the Boom Fantasy app. And we've got this baseball slate to talk about here, Eric. And first off, did you play the afternoon slate?
Not really. No, I had a little bit of there. I had more bets in play for the morning. It didn't go very well. It was not a very good morning for me. Got a Max Muncy home run out of nowhere. Even though he was just hitting ground ball after ground ball before and after that. Dodgers did not look good in general. Baltimore is now tied for the division lead with Tampa Bay. What a time to be alive. Pretty bad morning for me, so I'm looking to rebound in a big way.
All right, and we're going to try to help you all do that today. And we're going to be, by the way, is Eric's camera like moving around a lot, Jordan, or is that a me thing?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's what it is. Because I'm looking at it. I'm like, because you always have to be sure. Because you don't know. It's like, am I having a stroke? Is Eric in the middle of an earthquake? I don't know what's going on. But all of a sudden his camera is moving around. And I'm just trying to make sure that it's not a me issue. But there we go. So figuring it out right there. We can't get you a steady camera?
Well, I mean, I'm going to be moving here very shortly. Yep. So I've moved a lot of stuff already. I've started boxing up stuff in my place. And so it's not as sturdy as it used to be because there was a lot more weight of stuff that was on this desk before, but now it's moved. So I think it's just probably a little bit more fragile moving around.
All right. So that's what it is. I'm just making sure that I'm not, my eyes aren't spasming or anything. So we've got that figured out over there. And yeah, Jordan, get a little closer to the camera. That'll figure it out for us.
Get a Zin. That'll make you feel better, broski. little Zinfandel.
Let's talk about some pitching today. We've got DFS to talk about today as well. And when it comes to, and by the way, yeah, Jordan, do you have to put, the only way for you to put dip in your mouth is you have to get 2 inches away from the camera?
Hey guys, amazing do so. Oh, bro. You got those 5 milligrams going? What do you got?
Before we start going and talking about, have you ever seen the lip that Rafael Devers plays with when he plays baseball? There is nobody who plays baseball more dip in their mouth than Rafael Devers. Now, supposedly it's supposed to be against the baseball rules now. They don't want players to be dipping during the games. So Devers says that it's sunflower seeds and bubble gum. And I've never seen sunflower seeds and bubble gum that have just been dark brown before.
Nope. It is, that's a lie. It's supposed to help with your focus. It's supposed to calm you down a little bit. Although all I get is that little fuzzy feeling in my tummy whenever I have dip. So it is what it is. I usually partake when I have one Jordan Klein. He's a good influence like that.
Yeah. And also, is that what Jordan needs to relax? He's got too much going on. He's got a job where he wears sleeves 2 out of the 7 days a week, and he needs to calm himself down.
Yeah, I had a 3 milligram this morning, but I'm a pussy, so it is what it is. Jordan Klein's out there just smacking 5 milligrams around all afternoon. Nothing else to do. Is that what you got? You have the 6, you piece of shit. God.
Don't get me started on what Don Shander does during the day. That crazy motherfucker.
Oh my God.
You ever seen him with red eyes on shows? Yeah, I wonder why. Anyway, let's go and talk about some baseball DFS tonight. And let's start by talking about the pitching because we've got a number of good pitching options to look at today, Eric. A lot better than we've had on some of these recent slates. But the player that's standing out the most above everybody else, somehow Luis Castillo, whatever it is, the slate he ends up on, he always ends up being like 50% owned whenever he pitches. Yeah. No different today. The guy only gets the easiest matchups in the world. He's at home pitching against your Minnesota Twins. He's projected for 46.6% ownership over on DraftKings, on FanDuel. Going to refresh the ownership to make sure I'm looking at the most recent number here. He is projected for 26% ownership over on FanDuel. So by far the most popular pitcher on both sites. When it comes to large field tournaments, because Luis Castillo, we'll consider him a no-brainer for cash games, but in tournaments, do you want to be underweight to the field on Luis Castillo, even with the field, or overweight to him?
Probably going to end up right around the field. I'm just kind of finishing up everything on my end as it is right now. Looks like the Minnesota lineup for today, kind of what you would expect. He just feels like a really good option. You can copy and paste everything that we talked about with Brian Wu yesterday. Was it all that good of an outing for Brian Wu? No. Has Luis Castillo been a little bit brutal of late compared to what we might expect from him? Yes, but it's still such a good spot. My Minnesota Twins, this entire batting order, you have so many strikeouts available to you. Yes, Gallo, Farmer, Castro, they all get buried to the bottom of that lineup. Those are all the guys who strike out the most. Ryan Jeffers is, nearly a 30% strikeout guy himself. Everybody north of a 20% K rate. You could see Luis Castillo give up 3 or 4 like Wu yesterday, and I still find it hard to believe that he's not going to still find 5, 6 strikeouts, even in a floor scenario. It would take a lot to really go wrong for him not to be serviceable, but it has to be relative to the other pitchers on this slate. And I do think Carlos Rodon, Charlie Morton are two pitchers that I'm just going to get to a little bit more of. And I might just be a little bit underneath on Luis Castillo, but not by much. I'm looking at 38% of him in my last run, 9,300 on DraftKings. You could play about as much of him or as little of him as you wanted to, and there's pretty much justified reasons, just like yesterday with Wu.
We've got the YouTube chat speculating that Jordan Klein will be jawless in 20 years. That's an interesting take. That would be, can you imagine we're friends with Jordan? He starts, we have like a stochastic reunion 20, 30 years from now. He shows up, he looks like Melina from Mortal Kombat with just the mouth hanging down the jaw. Yeah.
So she has great fatalities, man. Great fatalities.
She's great fatalities. A lot of it though involves her eating people, but still I could see Jordan.
And then
like, how much dip do you have to do before you're eating people's faces in a video game? Maybe that was her issue.
It's just going to be Jordan Klein in The Last of Us as an extra, just going up and doing the little kissy thing that, again, that wasn't in the video game. I don't know where they came up with that for the TV show, but that's probably a conversation just for myself. No Buxton, I'm aware. You know how bad Buxton's been recently? Can we have a conversation about that? He's been really fucking shitty. It's not enjoyable. If I have my mom calling me complaining about Byron Buxton, then you know it's bad. She's just like, why? What is he doing? He strikes out every time he's up there. I'm like, no shit, Mom.
So let's look at, I mean, the worst player in baseball over the last
Ellie De La Cruz,
like 3 weeks has been Ellie De La Cruz, but Byron Buxton's not far behind. I wouldn't think. Let's see.
I don't even want to look at it. It's going to make me upset.
Yeah, I'm on Byron Buxton's Fangraphs page, looking at his splits. By the way, somehow he's only 29 years old. It feels like he's been hurt for 15 years. But if we go to Byron Buxton's page, oh yeah, this ain't great. So in
Sub-zero.
July, if you had to guess, what would you say his WRC plus is in July?
-90.
It is 6.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just saying, I was coming up with a make-believe number. 6? That's not good.
6, no. 6, and he's striking out in 33.7% of his at-bats.
Yeah.
I'll just for comparison, that actually might be worse than Ellie De La Cruz. That is egregiously low. A 6 WRC plus. All right, guess Ellie's for July.
Who?
Ellie De La Cruz. Guess his WRC plus for July.
I just said 2.
Oh, 2. Oh, so I was confused. I thought you said who.
2? What do you mean only 2?
All right. Yeah. Ellie's is actually 64 for July.
Oh, okay.
But since the All-Star break, it is -70.
Yeah, okay. That's the one that I knew was negative a lot. So yeah, that's chill.
-70 since the All-Star break, but still, he's been fairly shitty overall for the month. Negative wins above replacement. Anyway, Luis Castillo, my take on him, I understand why he's really popular. I think if you just want to be safe at pitcher, he's the best option to slate. He's one of my most rostered pitchers. This happens to me all the time when I'm running my lineups through our Sims tools and building out lineups. It'll be like, hey, Luis Castillo, I'm getting to him in 35% of my lineups. He's my most rostered pitcher. And okay, but that's also well below the field because he's projected to be in half of the field's lineup. So Luis Castillo, I think he's a really good option. It's just hard for me to get north of like the 50% that he's projected for. So
Agreed.
Good option there, Luis Castillo. If you're playing one lineup, I do think he's one of the safer options to play. Play him in cash games. I'm going to be a little bit underweight to the field to him in tournaments. As far as the other popular pitchers we have to talk about today, we have ownership going to Carlos Rodon at 34% or 31%, Justin Verlander at 34%, Charlie Morton at 27%. Of this trio of secondary popular pitchers, Justin Verlander, Carlos Rodon, Charlie Morton, all around 30% owned. Do you have a preference among these three?
Going to be Carlos Rodon. I do like Charlie Morton as well. He probably falls into that bucket next. I do like Eduardo Rodriguez, but he's more expensive at 9,500. I really like getting to Carlos Rodon. 1, you're getting 8,500. You're getting some savings going up against the Angels here in this spot. 2, the Angels, well, left on left, you don't neutralize Shohei Ohtani, but you're still no Mike Trout, number of other guys that are missing from this lineup, where that 113 WRC plus against lefties is not indicative of what you're going to have for this lineup today in this spot. Yeah, it's a ballpark that's a little bit more difficult, but I think some of the price considerations for him, he's just showing up for me quite a bit. And I would say I'm a little bit surprised because I have almost no Justin Verlander at the moment going up against the White Sox. Right on right should be a decent enough spot there, but for whatever reason, Carlos Rodon is way, way above all the other guys in this grouping for me.
Yeah, so I don't really have a prohibitive favorite. I do have a least favorite. That's Justin Verlander, which seems you and I are on the same page with.
We've been doing that a lot recently together. We've just been shorting this guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's had a fairly shitty year. And also, his price never comes down. Like, there's never a slate where it's like, hey, Justin Verlander, he's been bad. He's in a tough matchup or anything like that. Therefore, he's $6,800. If you look at his pricing, I mean, he's $8,800 this slate. He was $8,000 last slate, $86 the slate before, $83 before that. So he always has a pretty significant price tag, and it's never reflective of what his performance has been. You know, I think he's going to be better in the second half than he was in the first half, but there are concerns. Verlander's 40 years old. He had Tommy John surgery a couple years ago. His velocity has finally started to diminish. The results haven't been there this year. It doesn't mean he's terrible now. It just means he's taken a step back. He doesn't have the same fantasy upside, and his price just never reflects that. He always remains the same. So of these guys, he's at home. That's a positive. He's against the White Sox. That is also kind of a positive, but I only have 10% of him. That is the least amount that I have between him, Rodon, and Morton. You mentioned Erod here. Do you have a pay-up option that's a little bit more contrarian that you like to get to? Erod is projected for less than 20% ownership, or is it somebody else?
I like Yu Darvish at 8K. I think that I'm willing to kind of take those shots. We have seen a tiny bit of a velocity dip, but overall, Toronto, you're always worried about the matchup. You're worried about him finding available strikeouts. It's more of a talent thing. And now there's been a lot of slates where he's been popular in these spots, and I've been pretty against it. Now we're seeing positive leverage for the first time in a very, very long time going to Yu Darvish. He's sitting at 8K, so I'll call him a quote-unquote spend up. Now, Eduardo Rodriguez gets the Kansas City matchup, which is always enticing. They strike out at a 24.5% clip against lefties. You'll look at the lineup, and it's just a bunch of smut, nothing good to be looking at whatsoever. But 9,500, some of the stacks I want to get to, the Atlanta Braves, perhaps, San Francisco, Cincinnati. You got to be paying up for some bats today to really want it. And it's hard for me to get to an Erod, I think, in those kind of scenarios. And that's where I think Rodon is just jumping to the top. It's more of like, I need some of the savings. I'm taking some deep shots on guys that are sub 7K and just kind of like scattering the board, considering nobody has any ownership in that range. And then Yu Darvish, 8K as well, gives you quite a bit of savings off those other guys. So yeah, Rodon and Darvish popping up a lot for me.
We've got a super chatty from Olrat14, who he must have wind that you're not going to be on PGA Live before lock later, which, by the way, is going to be a great show. You guys should check that out with Jeff Ulrich and Ben Raza. That's going to be on about an hour and 40 minutes from now. They're going to be breaking down the Open Championship, final major of the year. Olrat14 has a golf question for you here, Eric. Baseball show, but nothing wrong with dipping into the PGA streets. I put out a PGA video.
Jordan loves dip.
No, that is true. Jordan does love it. I've actually, do you eat it, Jordan?
Do you gut it? You gut it? Do you gut, bro? They're perfect. They're perfect. They're perfect. And I like the way they feel in my tongue, and they make me buzz.
I've never thought of this before, how we always make fun of Jordan for kind of being incoherent and mumbling. And I just realized that it's because he always has dip in his mouth.
It's real hard. It's hard when you get all the time.
It's like the farmer from fucking Waterboy.
I'm going to give you a combination of something, and then we'll get to Olrat's question. What might it sound like if Jason Roslin was introing a DFS show, but also a dip in his mouth?
I can't happen here. One more macro. You guys hit the ball pie. It's still game. It's a game.
That was everything I wanted it to be, and a little bit more, added by the fact that you got so animated at one point that your camera also started shaking, which added a nice little element to it.
Jordan's dead.
That was wonderful.
Thank you. Honestly, I didn't know that today was going to be the highlight of my stochastic career when I woke up, but I'm glad it was. I
hope Jordan swallowed his pouch from laughing that hard. I hope he shits it out full later tonight or tomorrow. I don't know how long his digestive system takes.
You won't even need a wipe.
Olrat14 wants to know, Eric, what are a couple of your highest owned golfers for the Open Championship? Do you have that information handy?
I do. Let me pull up my sheet because I was building out stuff. I was running it through our Sims tool, which I would strongly suggest for everybody. Again, we also have the PGA lineup generator. I was firing a couple off there just to kind of see what types of lineups we were going to be throwing in. I know a lot of people have been doing that as well. It's a really good process just to kind of like get an idea of what you're going to do in terms of single entry. But at the top end, really hard for me to get away from a Scotty Scheffler at 12.5. Pricing is really tough, but I think that might drive down his ownership for the first time in a long time. So I love getting to him. I love getting to my guy Sam Burns at 8,500. He's the second highest positively leveraged golfer in the top golfers tool. And when I looked earlier today, I believe it is still there. I think Max Homa, nice to see him have a pulse. He's been really bad on Bermuda grass. Nice to see him get away from that surface. We've seen him succeed on Kikuya, golf courses like Riviera, where, you're going to have a lot of these type of approach shots, 170 to 210 yards because you have forced carry options, completely different type of surface that you're playing on. And then Tyrrell Hatton's good chalk. I think that he's going to be a player that I just end up on quite a bit in my build. Siwoo Kim, nobody's on. Feel pretty good about firing up him as a contrarian option. And overall, I would say relative to ownership, my favorite play on the board, let me just go through my numbers here. Jon Rahm, 11-2 for Jon Rahm. It's like, nowadays everybody want to talk like they got something to say. They forgot about Dre kind of thing. So Jon Rahm, 12.6% optimal percentage, 10.4% ownership. He's just a guy you haven't seen for 2 weeks. And for whatever reason, you're getting a ownership discount as a result.
Yep, no issues with any of that whatsoever. And as if I know what the hell I'm talking about, I just upload data into the Sims tool and then I do whatever it tells me to do.
It's a good way
really
to do
successful. It's been
data
really
is king, friends. Data is king.
Yeah, I came in 9th in the big $5 last week, and this is going to be the week that I end up coming in first place. Anyway, got a super chat.
$1 million.
1 million. 1 million. Not enough. I want to win more this week. Ace of Spade has left us a super chat, and back in the mix, Ace of Spade wants to know our favorite options for DK tiers. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this up for Ace of Spade. Yesterday, we had a lot of good options coming from the Los Angeles Dodgers. We had guys like Freddie Freeman was in the mix. He ended up having a good game. If I'm remembering. Oh no, yesterday was yesterday the Braves slate? I can't remember which. There one of the days Ace of Spade had one that he asked us, and there was a bunch of players. It was either yesterday or 2 days ago. Either way, DK tiers for today. Eric, do you have any tiers lineups built out? If not, I could just read off some of my results right here.
I have nothing, and my dog just decided to pop up and say hi. He woke up after his slumber.
Hello, Duke.
Yeah, he hasn't been on a show in a long time. He's been a good puppy dough. He's been a good puppy dough. Go boy.
You show him on camera now, or is that gonna or is your camera gonna fall?
What do you want to do? What do you want to do? You want to say hi? Oh, there he is. Look at this.
You guys remember when he was a little puppy, and now he's bigger than Eric? At least from that angle, he looks bigger than Eric.
He's almost 100 pounds now. Yeah, he's a big pup.
Yeah, from this angle, because he's a little closer to the camera and you're a little further away, he looks like a bear that weighs 600 pounds.
He's a big dude. He's excited about his yard, though. He's excited to go romping.
He's moving about a week and a half, and he's going to have his yard back there.
He is. He's excited. He's very excited.
Are you going to do a dog? Is he too big for a doggy door?
There will not be a doggy door. He'll just have a door, and he will go up to it, and he'll just open it and close it. So he's ready to rock. That's for sure. He doesn't know how good it's going to be, but I'm going to have a whole studio that I get to set up in the backyard. So looking forward to all of the new things here at the house. NFL guard. Yep, that's my dog.
One thing that's really hard to get away from in tiers is the Atlanta Braves, particularly in the first few tiers. Tier 1, you got Ronald Acuna as an option. Like in almost any scenario, unless there's a Coors Field game, if Ronald Acuna is a choice, he's probably the answer in tier. So tier 1, Ronald Acuna. Tier 2, you got 2 more Braves in Ozzie Albies and Sean Murphy. My lean is towards Ozzie Albies. Tier 3, another Brave. We've got Austin Riley as an option. Then we get to tier 4. Here's where we have to deviate a little bit. I do think there's a couple of good options here, but Pete Alonso is the top option for me in tier 4. Tier 5, let's correlate it with a little bit more Mets exposure. Francisco Lindor is available to us in tier 5. By the way, Julio Rodriguez also in tier 5. If he goes out and hits 1,000 home runs and ruins us in Boom Fantasy, maybe this is a good way to get a little bit of leverage here. or I shouldn't say leverage, hedge, right? If you want to play Julio Rodriguez in tier 5, if he hits 1,000 homers tonight, you're probably looking good in tier 5, even if your Boom Fantasy free square loses. Tier 6, I have Cody Bellinger, shockingly good this year.
Unreal good. You know where he'd look really good right now? The
Los
Dodgers.
Angeles.
Yeah.
He probably wouldn't even be playing every day if he was on the Dodgers, though.
Should be. He's so good. He's been good against lefties, too.
Yeah. Anyway, Cody Bellinger in tier 6. I think over the last month, he's like top 5 in baseball and wins above replacement WRC plus. So I like Cody Bellinger there in tier 6. He's the only player that I had that I just read off there that didn't correlate with players in any other tier, but he's been good enough that I still think that it is worthwhile. But let's go ahead and get back to talking about the pitching today, Eric. We've talked about a lot of the high-end options, a lot of the popular guys there. But if you're looking to save salary at pitcher today, who are you gravitating towards?
Graham Ashcraft. It's really brutal. It's tough down there. I thought about making a case for a Ryan Yarbrough, but if you listened to me last time we were on this show, Graham Ashcraft, I feel like he showed up last time around as well. It was a different slate he would have been successful on. I think this is more of the slate, an 8-game slate with limited options underneath 7K, under 8K, no real strikeout options. You're basically just looking for the savings as to upgrade some bats. And I think Graham Ashcraft is the path of least resistance. He's now had 3 consecutive quality starts, has not given up more than an earned run. I would like to see the strikeouts getting there, but the ground ball rate has been trailing back up and up and up recently. And it makes me feel as though he's somebody who can just kind of get by for you. And the ancillary benefit of him is that San Francisco is insanely popular. You're looking at an 11.6% ownership share for them, the most popular team in our projections right now in the top stacks tool. So you kind of killed 2 birds with 1 stone. If Graham Ashcraft succeeds, you're also able to have the most popular stack probably fail on the entire slate. So Graham Ashcraft, he helps me feel better about my lack of San Francisco exposure. I'm going to be undercutting them quite a bit on this slate. And as a result, it just makes sense to play a little bit of him.
I don't have that many cheap guys I'm getting to. It's a lot more of mixing and matching guys in that 8K range, like Carlos Rodon, who we talked about. I'm with you, by the way. You mentioned Yu Darvish. Yu Darvish is actually my most leveraged pitcher. He's the pitcher I'm most overweight to. So I like Yu Darvish a lot in the mid-range. We talked about other guys, Carlos Rodon, Charlie Morton, and I guess Morton's a little bit more expensive. But for me, it's going to be Kenta Maeda. And Maeda's been popular on pretty much every slate for the last month or so. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason he's not today is, number one, I think he burned a lot of people in his last start. He was uber popular against Oakland, right around 35-ish% owned, if I remember correctly, and put up a dud in that spot, got hit around in the 3rd inning and only was able to pitch 3 innings, gave up 6 runs, got pulled. We've seen a lot of upside for Maeda. And if you look at his numbers this year, all over the place, he's only made 4 starts. His fantasy outcomes, 28 fantasy points, 11, 33, and 8. So all over the place, but you kind of like that from a GPP perspective because he's priced right in the middle of those outcomes at $7,800. Based on his 4 starts this year, what we know about Kenta Maeda, there's clearly an upside there. There's also a downside, but for tournaments at $7,800, he's the guy in the mid-range that I think offers a lot relative to his ownership. So he's the guy I get the most of who's priced under 8K. Right at 8K, it would be Yu Darvish, but if I'm going below that, it is Kenta Maeda. You're also getting slight amount of leverage too. If he pitches well and gets the win, that's a win bonus that Luis Castillo is not going to be getting. Is Maeda somebody you're having any kind of exposure to?
Yep, I have 16% of him, so not a complete nothing for me. On today's slate, it's slightly above the field. I think if I were building in my old fashion where I'm looking for positive leverage or I'm looking for, who's the pitcher who's going a little bit under-owned relative to our projections according to our top pitchers tool, I would be playing a lot more of him. But since I've used the Sims tool, there's certain things that just tend to happen based on the way that I build lineups and based on how I'm simulating the field. And I just kind of knew coming into this, the Kenta Maeda before might have been a guy that I would have played 25-30% of and just tried to double the field on, knowing that I think he's going in underappreciated. But as it stands, I'm just barely over the field.
Okay. Anything else you want to talk about at pitching?
Are we going to roster any Tuki Toussaint now that he's going to be a starter for the first time? He's looked pretty decent in some of these long relief appearances. Kind of been forced into duty more so than anything. He's been a long reliever when they've been getting shelled. He's been decent enough. It's just another guy in terms of run prevention that I think you can take a shot on, but I'm more inclined to go way down to the bottom of the barrel and take shots on Ashcraft and Yarborough than trying to go to Tukey, mainly because 6,900. I don't think he's got any kind of pronounced strikeout upside against the Mets or against anybody at this stage of his career. And then I do have a tiny bit of Jose Barrios. Once again, he might have been a guy that I would have played a little bit more of. I've never been a Jose Barrios guy ever in my entire life, but he's still got positive leverage. He's sub 7%. It's a really tough spot, tough to get strikeouts against San Diego, but he's just another pitcher that I feel like can maybe be contrarian for you if you're going to be going to the likes of the Giants or the Braves.
And just because you mentioned Barrios, and we got a question about him from Einsteinium in our Discord channel. If anybody else has questions in Discord, at us. Einsteinium is saying, do you like Barrios tonight in single entry? I actually do like him quite a bit in single entry. I think that if you're getting to pitchers like Yu Darvish, Jose Barrios, I do think that's a decent single entry combination. It's going to be way lower owned than most pitching combinations on the slate. And also, I do think the offenses we want to get to are pretty concentrated. Like there's 4 or 5 offenses that are really popular, and I think it's all warranted. So for single entry, I do like Jose Barrios in there. So I don't have an issue with him in single entry. I do think he's being underrepresented today. And I expect he's going to be like 3-4% owned in some of those single entry contests. So I do like getting to him there. You mentioned that Jose Barrios is somebody that you're getting some exposure to. He's super low owned today. Tough matchup against the Padres. Although their offense has been up and down. Do you have an issue with him being rostered in single entry by Einsteinium?
I don't have a problem with it. I would say that I would prefer the Darvish Maeda combination. And I know you would have access to it because it's, $200 and $400 difference to either one of them. I don't think it's a problem. If you are super chalky with bats, I understand the case for trying to go to a Barrios and being a little contrarian, but nobody's playing Darvish. I prefer him over Barrios, and nobody's playing Maeda, and I prefer him over Barrios. So in a vacuum, I would prefer one of those two or both of those two over Barrios, but I'd have to see the rest of your lineup.
Yeah, if you're playing a chalky offense, I do think Barrios is a pretty solid way to differentiate there. And, one thing with Barrios is that his strikeout rate has bounced back a little bit this year. Last year was 19.8%. This year it's gone up to 22.8%. The underlying numbers also a little bit better. I mean, they could only get better from last year. He had an ERA north of 5, an expected ERA north of 5. More reasonable results from this year, 3.41 ERA, 3.89 FIP. So we're seeing slightly better stuff out of Jose Barrios, and the strikeout upside has also been a little bit more promising. In addition to that, his velocity is up this year. Pretty good amount. So for his career, Barrios 93.8 average mile per hour fastball velocity. This year, 94.3. So definite positive signs. He's only had one other year where he had a higher average fastball velocity, and it was a year that was 2020. So it was the shortened year. He only threw, 63 innings that year. So pretty promising to see that he has his career best velocity over a full season, other than that one season where it was shortened due to COVID and whatnot. So I think Barrios, fine option for single entry. I like the thought there, Einsteinium. Anything else? Any other final thoughts to add here? I know I asked you before. We just want to make sure.
Nah, I think we ran the gamut on it.
All right. So, Jordan, let's fire up the MLB lineup generator and see what ends up popping up when we're building lineups. And we'll do balanced today. Let me pin this in the Zoom so I have it up here. So Jordan will show you right here on screen where you find the MLB lineup generator over on our site. And if you guys want to sign up for it, link below. Less than $5 when you sign up for the first time. Easiest tool that we have here over at Stokastic.com. Come and win some big money with us, or you can sign up for any Stokastic package using the link that we have below. We got a message on Twitter from our guy, Peter Hanley, who's been a long time sub to Stokastic. He's won a lot of tournaments, Peter. The other day, $50K that he banked in the $15. Had Zach Wheeler and Kyle Bradish as his pitchers because of the screenshot I took. I cut off the rest of the lineup because I'm a donkey, so I forget who else was in the lineup. But shout out to Peter for winning $50,000. And if you guys want to sign up for any package we have over at Stokastic, there's a link below that is going to get you 50% off the lineup generator, the cheapest package we have here that you could get access to for less than $5 when you sign up for the first time. They go all stack types and balanced lineups to start here, Jordan. And I'm curious to see what ends up popping up. We're making some balanced lineups. So options that you have here in the lineup generator, if there's lineups you don't like, you could discard them. If there's lineups you like, you save them. And then we get to the end here, and you could see what some of those exposures look like. And Jordan's going to save a few more here. So 20 lineups built. No real surprise. Our most rostered pitcher is Luis Castillo. Second most, Charlie Morton. As far as stacks go, we're getting to a lot of Acuna as a one-off. We are getting some Brave stacks, but then the Mets showing up in lineups, the Cubs, the Giants. This isn't one of these slates where there's one team that has like 20% top stack odds for us or anything, but there are a handful of teams that are rating out really well for us, and they are here are the teams that are grouped together with the best top stack odds. Tier 1, it's the Braves and the Giants. Then behind them, you've got the Mets and the Reds, the Cubs and the Tigers. Like all those teams kind of grouped together. You see Jordan has it on screen right there, but we've got the Braves and the Giants kind of above everybody else. So that's kind of what I'm expecting to see as we're running lineups through the lineup generator, because a lot of times it's going to mirror the other data on the site and what we're seeing in the top stacks tool. Is there anything else that you're noticing here other than we're getting to the Giant stacks, the Mets stacks, any other pitchers that are standing out to you or anything?
Yeah, the Mets stacks are definitely kind of standing out to me in a pretty pronounced way, I would say. I mean, Tuki Toussaint, it's not like I think he's anything good. He's been decent in some of these relief spots, giving up limited power, 3.38 ERA, still walking enough guys. And again, the ground ball rate is kind of what's taken off in some spots, but has one outlier performance. I was going through his data yesterday in St. Louis. He had 13 ground balls and 0 fly balls. I think that that's kind of maybe playing with some of the data on my end, where I do think the Mets probably have a little bit more upside than was being originally thought of. So I like that our data has identified that as a pretty good spot to be getting to.
We've got a question here from Einsteinium also about stacks, and then we'll look at some of the FanDuel lineups for the lineup generator as well. But Einsteinium wants to know, is it reasonable to fill stack the Cubs or the Tigers? So looking at a secondary stack, Tigers, Cubs, I like both of them. I do have a little bit more exposure to Detroit, which I very rarely have exposure to Detroit, but I do today. But yeah, I think both of those are pretty good options. Cubs, Tigers. I'm getting to a little bit more exposure to the Tigers today. Do you have a preference between the Tigers and the Cubs?
Tigers, for sure.
Tigers. Go Tigers.
Go Tigers. Oh, Koto. Oh, yeah. Hey, let's go. Let's go, boys.
Eric is on his game today. I gave him a really obscure one, and he came through with flying colors earlier.
Hey, yo, you go easy on that cigar, boy.
I guess I should do it for Jordan.
You go easy on them pouches, boy.
You know what's going to... If you ask Eric to do too many impressions at once, I think his head just explodes because he tries to fit them all in. It's so... When my brother and I were kids...
just combine everybody with Rosalind.
When we were kids, my brother and I had this theory that if anybody was to ever burp, fart, hiccup, and sneeze at the same time, they would just spontaneously combust. And I kind of feel it's the same for you if you have to do like 5 or 6 impressions at once.
Yeah. So let's keep it at 2. We'll combine it with Rosalind. Everything can be combined with Rosalind and we can move on.
Yeah. Or else it'll just look like, before we're talking about Molina and Mortal Kombat, it'll just be like Eric will implode and it'll look like a Mortal Kombat fatality on screen. Like somehow his heart will come out through his mouth. It'll be a whole scene.
Finish him. I'm ready for it.
All right. FanDuel lineup time. And same deal, Jordan. Let's build some balanced lineups. Balanced lineups. And see what ends up looking different on FanDuel compared to DraftKings. I assume we're still going to be getting to a lot of Luis Castillo. And Jordan's going to build out a few more here. There we go. And, actually, I'm kind of surprised by this. Carlos Rodon is our most rostered pitcher on FanDuel, a little bit ahead of Luis Castillo, but Rodon's only 7,500 on FanDuel. He's a good pitching option on both slates, but still 7,500 on FanDuel, definitely really appealing price point. I'm going to expect Rodon to get better going forward. I know he struggled in his first couple outings of the year, but keep in mind, he's missed almost the entire season due to an injury. He was pitching in the minor leagues. He's working himself up. He's going to be better going forward. 7,500 is just a misprice. As far as stack exposures, we're getting to a bunch of Braves, good amount of Giants, good amount of Mets, Yankees coming in at 10%. Anything here really shocking you or standing out when it came to that stack exposure?
Nope. Braves on FanDuel, a tale as old as time, song as old as rhyme.
Go back to the player exposures, Jordan. Yeah, Ronald Acuna, our most rostered hitter. Austin Riley, second. Matt Olson, fourth, right behind Jock Peterson there. So Braves are really popping up predominantly here in FanDuel, which I have no issue with whatsoever. And now let's scroll down a little bit more, Jordan. I just want to see what other hitters might be popping up essentially as one-offs. Oswaldo Peraza. Peraza has been close to min price on FanDuel and DraftKings every time he started over the last week. I think he's a great source of salary savings. Love him as a one-off on both sites. Anything else here that catches your eye you want to bring up before we move on?
Again, more Mets. We have Mets again that are just hanging out and living our lives. That's a team that I'm pretty invested in there as well. I will say also another thing, and I think this is probably something that the lineup generator has gotten better at. I don't know if this was intentional or not, but I like our spread out nature of our exposures. It seems as like we don't have any batter that's jumping up other than Acuna and Riley up there, which you could easily turn off to other one-offs if you wanted to. I like that we're starting to see some really spread out exposures, kind of focusing on the stack and the overall ownership of the lineup, the overall build of that lineup. These are the best of the best lineups that we're giving you in the lineup generator. And so when you combine them together, it's not surprising that you can see guys like Acuna and Riley popping on a day that I think the Braves might be a little bit under-owned relative to other slates. But really interesting to see that we're spread out everywhere else.
Yeah, it's a slate where, and we're going to talk about stacks here in a little bit. I don't have a team that I have like 30% exposure to as a stack today. It doesn't exist. I'm a lot more spread out of offense than I've been on some of these other recent slates. So that's a little preview of everything we have in the lineup generator. If you guys are ever using the lineup generator, something else you could do as well is you don't have to just directly use the lineups here. Even right now, you can look on screen if you're playing on FanDuel, mix and match some of the players you're getting a bunch of exposure to. We've seen people say that they've been tournaments by using not only the lineups from the lineup generator, but also building additional lineups built around some of the players they're getting the most exposure to. And if you're signing up for that tool for the first time, use the link below so you get access to it for less than $5. Let's go and talk about some stacks now. How about it, Eric?
Party.
All right, stack time, everybody. And also, if you haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you ever want to check out our strategy shows or any other content on the go, check out our podcast channel, Stochastic Daily Fantasy. Subscribe to it. Also, leave us a 5-star review because it would be nice and I would appreciate it. Really does help us out a bunch. It's free content. Stuff like that. It helps keep our content free. And also, come football season, which is coming up really quick, we're going to be doing some podcast exclusive shows. They're going to be available there as well. But we've got all these stacks that are rating out pretty well in the top stacks tool, Eric. We talked about the teams that are kind of grouped together as the ones that have the highest top stack odds, which, just to read that off again, it was the Braves, the Giants, the Mets, the Reds, the Yankees, the Cubs, the Tigers. Are any one of these teams individually one that you're getting more exposure to than any else in any kind of significant way?
Yeah, the Braves are showing up for me an absolute metric ton. And I think part of this is that I have done some things with San Francisco that's kind of limiting just how much I was getting to them. I don't really love this lineup. We've seen Matos really have virtually no power. He's kind of faded amongst this baseball team. 89 at bats, just the one home run. Now he is still in Cincinnati. He's still a prospect that has plenty of time to perform. You get Yastrzemski, who's batting, 3K, sitting in the 2-hole here today. Conforto, I think Jock is probably your best pitch hitting candidate here amongst everybody, but they're really, really cheap. I see this team ending up really popular. Like I could see them getting really steamed up. And I think that on slates like that, for me, the way that I build out, Atlanta is going to jump to the top very, very quickly. I'm also getting to pitching combinations that I think are very contrarian, whether that's the Maeda, the Darvish, the Graham Ashcrafts, that give me access to be able to play 5-man Atlanta stacks. And it's just such a smash spot for me against Ryan Nelson. And the data is proving that. We saw two of the largest owned one-offs being Ronald Acuna, being Austin Riley when we were building out in the lineup generator. And I don't think that that's any kind of a mystery that when I'm going to be getting away from as popular as what Luis Castillo is and getting away from some of these extremely popular stacks with pinch hitting concerns like San Francisco, I'm going to end up landing on Atlanta a lot.
Yeah, Atlanta and San Francisco, the two teams I have the most exposure to. Something else also is, because I'm uploading my single entry lineup right now, I am stacking the Giants in single entry. The easiest way that I'm doing it while still being different is I'm not playing Luis Castillo in single entry. Okay. So I think that in itself is going to make me massively different. Like my expectation is that Castillo is going to be 60 to 70% owned in single entry contests today. So just not playing him already gives me a fairly unique lineup. So I like the Giants a lot. I'm not a big Graham Ashcraft fan. I'm going to be stacking against him. Same a lot by getting to the Braves against Touki Toussaint. And I don't even think Toussaint is a terrible pitcher, but this Braves offense is a ridiculous juggernaut. Like, they make no sense. Every single day, the Braves score a gazillion runs. They all hit homers, top to bottom. There's not a single easy out in this entire lineup from 1 to 9. It's a really tough ask for Touki Toussaint. So Braves and Giants are going to be, it's going to be my...
They're facing Ryan Nelson.
Oh, sorry, Ryan Nelson.
You're okay, Ryan Nelson. Touki Toussaint, though, I do like the Mets. That was, I hope you guys kind of heard that a little bit earlier, but Tuki's facing the Mets.
Touki pitched against the Braves in his last outing.
Correct, he did.
Yeah. Anyway, Braves against Ryan Nelson, all these garbage replacement level pitchers. The Braves are hitting everybody, though. Like, you could put the Braves against Roger Clemens in 1994. They could all be $7,000 on DraftKings. They'd still probably be 30% on and score 40 runs on that slate. That's how this team runs.
That is correct.
That is how this team runs. Anyway, my bad for misspeaking, but Ryan Nelson, also trash. The Braves should have no issue getting to him. Those are the two teams I have the most exposure to, the Braves and then also the Giants. Are any of these popular stacks one that you're well underweight to the field to? I know you had said that the Giants maybe weren't as high on. Does that mean you're way undercutting the Giants? Or is it still a team that you're getting exposure to, but leveraging by playing some Ashcraft as well?
Yeah, they are popping in terms of stack score, in terms of leverage, in terms of top stack. For me, I have a feeling that might end up being not the case. We shall see. Maybe I'm just completely off my rocker. But based on what I ended up having show up, they are popping up a lot in terms of me trying to replicate this field. And that's just landing me on less of them. It's not that I'm fading them because I think they're still in a very high upside spot. You have a catcher outfielder, Sable, that, obviously you play a lot at the catcher spot, and that makes a lot of sense. You get Wilmer Flores, who, again, I don't like to think of things in terms of hot and cold, but for all intents and purposes, he's been hot. VR, who's flat 2K for DraftKings purposes, makes a lot of sense as well. And then every outfield option is in play. You have 5 of them to choose from, favorites of which being Mike Yastrzemski and Michael Conforto at 3K and 3,300 respectively. So San Francisco, while I think they're a good stack, and while they're jumping in terms of our tools, I do expect them to be maybe a little bit too popular for my liking, especially for single entry, especially for 20 max. I'm going to be shorting them just a tiny bit.
Yeah, like, I'm looking through my stack exposures, and there's not a team that I'm fading here in this, because I just have so many teams that I have around 10% exposure to. The Giants, the Yankees, the Tigers, the Mets, the Braves, the Cubs. And it's just a lot of these stacks I'm fairly even with the field on. Like, this isn't really where I'm taking a stand. I don't have a stack that I really like to fade. So, it's kind of hard for me to say from that angle. Are there any really contrarian stacks you're getting to at any kind of meaningful amount today? Because the answer is no for me.
Minnesota. I had Minnesota yesterday. Talked about, I guess not here, but I had talked in chat and in a couple of other spots where I thought Minnesota against Brian Wu, he was extremely popular. Luis Castillo is going to be extremely popular. And on any given slate, you're probably going to be running into positive leverage on a team like Minnesota. And I think that regardless of their results here of late, there is enough. I've talked about Alex Kirilloff being somebody who's a second half candidate to possibly emerge. He's had such crazy power, 60 out of 60 raw power grade score over on FanGraphs, and it hasn't shown up yet this entire season, but he's been hitting for average. He's kept himself around, and an 828 OPS. We've now seen him go yaya in 2 of his last 3 games. That power still exists. It just needs time to translate here to the big league level. So Alex Kirilloff batting third, a batter that I'm well north of the field as a one-off. Same with Max Kepler at 2,600. It's just a team that I think fits very nicely when you're trying to just stack against the most popular pitcher on the slate.
There actually is. I'm a little bit underweight to the Reds, and this is just price point related. And the fact too that I'm not in love with Ellie De La Cruz. Like, I know he's had a great fantasy season to this point, and I do think he has a lot of upside. I don't think it's crazy at all. I think he's the best prospect in baseball. We were talking about a guy who, for the season now, has a 107 WRC plus and a BABIP over 400. Like, that, those are really concerning things. That, and he's striking out in like almost half his at bats right now. So if I'm going to be a little bit lighter on Ellie, this team is so expensive too, one of the most expensive stacks on the slate. So I am a little bit underweight to the field here on the Reds. They have a decent matchup against Ross Stripling. There's still a lot of upside for this team with the power and whatnot, but it's just a little bit too expensive for me. And there's all this bias pro Reds right now. Before the season started, like, was there anybody who was going to expect the Reds to be this popular of a team? And now I've gotten to a point. It's not even that they're just popular, but all of their hitters. Let me pull up some of these prices really quick. The prices for this Reds lineup.
We get it. You hate Ellie De La Cruz. You're a fun hater. I get it.
I don't, it's not necessarily that I hate him individually, but he's $6,400. McLean is $5,700. They're priced like the Braves now.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was giving you shit, by the way. You know that.
It's a little much. We've got Ellie De La Cruz is $6,400. McLean is $5,700. Fraley's $5,100. Steer is $4,900. Votto's $4,600. Friedl's $4,500. It's just a difficult team to stack. Unless it like this is Braves at Coors Field pricing.
I get it. You hate Ellie De La Cruz. That's all you want everybody to know is how terrible he is at baseball. I get it. I understand.
I really have to hope nothing bad happens to him. Like, I just like, because people are just going to blame me now.
You've been blamed for worse.
That's true. Some of it for good cause, by the way. But as we go through the rest of the stacks on the slate, I'm just kind of looking through my exposures and trying to find if there's any team that I can make a case for that I'm getting some exposure to that isn't all that popular. But, you know, one thing too about our top stacks tool for today, and this doesn't happen all that often, but a lot of these teams that are projected for like 7, 8, 9, 10% exposure, we have them all as being underowned in the top stacks tool. Like the Braves have the highest top stack odds on the entire slate at 13.8%. They're 10.5% owned. So we do have them as being underowned. But then what happens is because of this, you go to the bottom of the top stacks tool and you get these teams like the Royals are projected for 3.7% ownership with 2.5% top stack odds. Like, it's really hard for me to make a good case for any of these super low owned teams to be worthwhile because we do have them being a little bit overowned still. The one that I would say that I do think makes sense, especially because of our pitcher exposures, Eric, Chicago White Sox.
Yep.
Justin Verlander is a little bit on the decline here. And I think he's a little bit too popular pitcher. I think he's a little bit too expensive. And the White Sox are the lowest owned team second lowest owned team on the entire slate. Twins 1.6% owned, White Sox 1.8%. Justin Verlander is not nearly as good as Luis Castillo at the respective points of their career. I don't love the White Sox offense this season, but they're only 1.8% owned against a pitcher who's been a little bit blow up prone in Justin Verlander. I like the White Sox as a super low owned stack because I do have 4% of them, which is enough to be almost triple the field on White Sox.
I totally get it. And again, this is one of those inherent things where you notice in your builds, if you're going to be shorting a pitcher and you don't have a lot of interest in them, what is the most likely outcome that happens that they end up failing, where they end up being a poor option relative to their ownership? It's by the team on the opposite side going nuts. So I do like the White Sox call out.
Yeah. And once again, it's not even one that I have a massive amount of exposure
to. I have like 8%,
just,
but that's enough.
Yeah. It's just they're in my player pool. And like, I just don't have a whole lot of other stacks that I could point to and be like, oh, there's a low owned stack that I'm overweight to. And the White Sox are pretty easy to get more than the field of as well. Cause I mean, they're 1.8% owned. If you guys are playing 20 lineups and you play one White Sox stack, you're way overweight to the field on the White Sox. So I think that is a pretty decent looking team to give consideration to. Are there any other stacks that you're really liking, Eric? If not, we could talk about some bets and do some home run picks before we head out.
No, I think that we've kind of covered most everything. I mean, the one other one that we haven't talked about, just because of ballpark and afternoon baseball game, where I think there's maybe a little bit more upside in Anaheim than normal. Carlos Rodon's going to be really, really popular, and we still don't know exactly how he's going to pan out. We've only seen 10 and a third innings from him so far. Has had a 1.16 whip. Some of the advanced numbers look okay, but really didn't get any swings and misses against the Cubs whatsoever in that first outing. Went into Coors. You know, you can't blame a guy for going into Coors and giving up 4 earned in his second outing. But because of some of that unpredictability, because it is a 4:07 Pacific time start time, that game starts in 10 minutes. I think you could run into an Angels stack being a decent enough spot to be getting to. You get the cheap options along with Ohtani, Moniak and Ward in the middle of that lineup. It's one team that I'm definitely over the field on as well.
All right, so let's talk about some bets then, and then we'll close this up with our home run picks of the day. So, Eric, I know you've been pretty involved in the betting streets. If you guys, by the way, are not following Eric Lindquist on Twitter, you're doing yourself a disservice because there's free money to be had just by following Eric on Twitter, which in itself is free. Twitter, totally free platform. And he's doing his YouTube videos that he does over on the Odd Shopper YouTube channel. He breaks down every single game with his favorite bets. And now he's posting updates on Twitter. It's been super valuable. Eric, one of the fastest growing Twitter accounts in the betting space, has grown his Twitter account by like 50% in the last few weeks. So guys, go follow Eric on Twitter if you haven't already done it. But Eric, what bets are standing out to you for tonight? And I'm also pulling up BetPro here to see what kind of data we have that's standing out.
Yeah, so I'm a chalk donkey. I loved Atlanta. I'm with the public there, running on the run line. I'm all about that play today. San Diego money line. I'm also on the Darvish against Berrios. Shouldn't surprise you that I liked Darvish in that spot. Berrios, he's been decent. He's been a lot better this year. I haven't gone out of my way to pick on him, but San Diego, one of the bright spots in a dark, bleak world yesterday in the betting streets. I'm just going to run that one back at plus money. And then from a home run perspective, there's a number of plays that I think make some sense. You do have plus 400 at a couple of books for Shohei Ohtani. I know it's left on left, but this ballpark in Anaheim just opens up so much for a player like Ohtani with his pattern. You have a low fence out there to right field for any ball that he's pulling. You're just seeing way more home runs over the course of the last 2 years since they lowered that fence. And it just creates, I think, some undervalued plays from time to time, especially left on left. Shohei Ohtani, there's a reason he has 40 bajillion home runs this season. I think that he makes sense as a decent home run call for today as a contrarian piece.
I'm looking through the bets that we have here in BetPro. If you guys want to sign up for BetPro, we do have a link for it below, and a couple things that are standing out that I want to run by you. First of all, the over/under for strikeouts for Ross Stripling is 4.5. That seems like a pretty big number for him. I know I just talked all this shit about the Reds as a stack, but that doesn't mean I expect 4.5 strikeouts out of Ross Stripling, who typically doesn't work all that deep into games. We only projected for 3.2, so I like the under on that. I'm going to agree with our data. That actually is the number one bet of the day for us. Stripling under 4.5 strikeouts. I know that's also one that's available on Prize Picks. Is that of interest to you?
Very much so. Very much so. So Ross Stripling, I didn't see that. I'm going to try to fire that up here if I had noticed it. That's one of the things, is that you're combing through trying to find your best available. There was one strikeout prop that I thought made sense. Under 7.5 for Luis Castillo. It's plus money on the under of 7.5. It's, again, a pitcher that I do expect to have a lot of success. He could definitely have 6-7 strikeouts and still have a really good outing here against Minnesota. But that is a huge number that we're looking at. And having Byron Buxton out of the lineup right now, probably a bad thing, which is so wild to say at this stage of the season.
Yeah, so Ross Stripling under 4.5 strikeouts. Luis Castillo, especially at plus money there. Let's see what home run props are standing up. I'm going to sort this by home run. Number one home run prop of the day.
Jock's got to be up there. Jock was up there earlier today. I did have a little sprinkle of him at plus 400, but nothing that was nuts. Jock was, I think, the only guy who really stood out from an over perspective in MLB BetPro.
Yeah, there are currently no plus EV home run bets, which, hey, that'll happen sometimes. Sometimes the best bet is the bet that you don't place. Sometimes there just isn't any home run value. So no home run picks that are really standing out here in BetPro. So nothing on that end. And then did you have any other game lines you liked outside of the Braves minus 1.5?
Yeah, so Braves minus 1.5, talked about the Dodgers, or sorry, not the Dodgers, but the Padres as well. And then I do have a half unit on the White Sox money line as well, but that's more of a value thing. That number's moved from plus 175 to plus 185 with our friends at BetMGM. I thought that was worth a sprinkle.
All right, so let's go ahead and do some home run picks. And if you guys have any outstanding questions for us in Discord, at me, or if you guys are in YouTube chat and you want to throw in your own home run picks, I could read some of those off as well, because I already see people just throwing them in there. We had Jake Swales. He's saying that Willie Castro is going to hit a home run today. He's also calling for a stolen base. He was calling for more than just a home run and a stolen base from Jake. And then Rob P. It feels like he's trolling me a little bit, but his home run pick is Ellie De La Cruz, my mortal enemy. Now, with that said, if he hits it out of the ballpark, it's not going to impact his BABIP that's about to regress. So that's one thing that he could do there for sure. And that is actually one place I do think that Ellie could improve in the second half of the season. He showed very little power in the first half of the year. I could see that definitely improving a little bit there. But anyway, Ellie De La Cruz, that is the homer there that we have as a pick from Rob P. What is going to be your home run pick of the day, Eric?
I'm going to go, I'll give you just a back-to-back. Juan Soto and Fernando Tatis both go yard.
Oh, look at you. Are they going to do it back-to-back in the same?
Back-to-back in the same, I don't know what inning, but they're going to go back-to-back. So y'all have your phones up. Actually, one of the worst bets you can place is a live home run prop. But it's 12 plus 1,200 this time around as opposed to plus 400. Doesn't matter. Don't do that. Just bet both of them ahead of time. Let's go.
I like to sometimes where we start to try to get home run picks from people. And then what the chat does, they try to one up each other. So somebody went with a home run and a stolen base. So then what does Swaggy Pete come in and do? He calls for a Sean Murphy double dunk. So he's calling 2 homers for Sean Murphy. By the way, none of our picks are going to be accurate because we're all making egregious selections at this point where it's like,
we are.
Willie Castro, home run and stolen base. Eric's calling for back-to-back home runs. Swaggy Pete calling for 2 home runs out of Sean Murphy. Let me see if I can right the ship a little bit here.
Oswaldo Cabrera, let's go.
Yeah. Mike Yastrzemski, right? Like not like the most obvious pick in the world, but still somebody who I think is live to the home run today. Also could go with Jock Peterson. Yesterday, Jock Peterson was my home run pick. I forgot to check what the final ownership actually ended up being on the Giants, but their lineup didn't come out until 90 seconds before the slate started.
Yeah, I tried to get to Wilmer Flores. Like I was frantically trying to shift stuff around. I ended up with some dead lineups. It was Blake Sable that ended up catching back-to-back games or something that pissed me off. That was super tilting. I had like 8 or 9 dead lineups because I couldn't swap absolutely everything, and is what it is. I knew what I was running into playing San Francisco.
What made it yesterday really convenient, at least, was so there was 2 players that were in the Giants final lineup that weren't projected to be in for us. One of them, like you said, it was Sabalin instead of Bailey, but he was $100 less. So it was super easy to make that global swap. And then the other one was Clark Schmidt in the lineup instead of Crawford. Crawford getting placed on the injured list. Same thing. He was 100 less than Crawford. So it was 2 really easy, quick global swaps, which just ended up being really convenient and easy because or else I would have had some dead lineups.
The Sabal one was not. You were dead with Catcher. Catcher was really, really hard to switch around.
No, because he was $100 less.
Oh, it must have been something else. I know what it was. So I didn't have Wilmer Flores in back-to-back, but then after he went they ended up keeping him in. He goes double dong, so that was cool.
So, but we had more or less the right projected lineup, and it was such a weird situation with being not exactly a doubleheader, but there was a game being continued. They only had 2 innings left to play. So the Giants lineup came out 90 seconds before that game.
The Cincinnati one came out like 25 minutes before lock. That I was fine with that.
They put out their lineup like the second the game ended.
It was incredible.
Anyway, we're about at lock here. Do you have any final thoughts on the slate before we sign off here?
No, it's going to be a fun one. I do like this slate. I have a couple of lineups that have a ton of salary left over, and I don't really kind of bat an eye at it. A couple of them where I am stacking up 2 teams that don't necessarily need to use all of your salary. Don't ever think anything of it. Probably one of the more overrated things that you could possibly worry about.
And one final comment in our Discord channel, this one coming from Heflove. He's got a Don call. He is calling for Cody Bellinger to hit a home run. Don't mind that call at all. So shout out to Heflove for bringing that to us from the Discord channel. For everybody else, thank you very much for watching. If you haven't done it yet, click that like video. That animation, still the special one on YouTube. You can only find out what it is by clicking on that like button. Hit the thumbs up. We really do appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Hope to see you back here tomorrow.
PGA DFS golfing.